stone. I know. Even though the Florida statute says that they have every right and they can intervene.
Maybe you ought to find a nicer place to live.
It's nice, it's just the
I know.
some of the people there.
It's convenient.
This time we'll call to order the March 31, 2025 meeting of the City of Clearwater Community Redevelopment Agency. This time we'll move to item 2.1 on the agenda, approval of the minutes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. We'll move to item 3 on the agenda, citizens to be heard regarding items not on the agenda. Are there any citizens here today who want to be heard regarding items that are not on today's agenda? If so, please come hand a comment card to the clerk to my left at the dais, and then you'll have 3 minutes each.
My name is Jill Gibbs, and I'm here just to ask a few questions about your upcoming vote to sell city property to the Church of Scientology. I'm aware that this is a comment section and not a time for conversation, so hopefully you can just consider my questions and discuss them among yourselves in the work session. First of all, I think a lot of us are curious how the deal came to be. We're unable to find any information in any of the minutes or notes from the previous council meetings. There's been council members who have suggested that they will move forward with their yes vote simply because no one else is bidding on the property. My question would be, is anyone else aware that this property is available for purchase? I believe that the Clearwater citizens deserve to know how the deal came to be. I've been in communication with a couple of council members who told me that they're not aware of what the Church of Scientology will do with this property and that they would encourage the church to share their plan, but I could tell you today that their plan is on their website as well as a corresponding site plan. And in their words, the plan is that it will be a, quote, entrance park, which will include pillars bearing the 21 precepts to the way of happiness, which is a moral code that Mr. Hubbard devised to create a happier world. My concern is that if I was able to find the pictures and explanation of what this property will be used for, why do some of the city council members who are voting remain unaware? I also asked if these city council members were aware that the Church of Scientology has plans to take over the city of Clearwater. Also given an answer no. According to the St. Petersburg Times article that won a Pulitzer Prize for their investigation, files were obtained through the courts that revealed, quote, the documents reveal that the Church of Scientology came to Clearwater with a written plea to establish its program headquarters, its school of theology, so to speak, in the old Fort Harrison Hotel and to, again, quote, take control of the city, end quote. So lastly, I asked if the city council members were aware of the harms that have been caused by the Church of Scientology, as well as the accusations and charges that have come against them. And again, the response was no. The Church of Scientology has been accused of enslavement, fraud, extortion, kidnapping, sexual, physical, and verbal abuse. And so for me, the fact that these issues, both of Scientology's plans for this property, as well as their reputation for having caused enormous harm and abuses, how are these unknown to council members who plan to vote yes to sell them this property? Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. If you would, please, to complete a comment card if you haven't already.
We did. Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
good.
Thank
Very
you.
good. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Kelly, and I'm a 17-year resident of Clearwater, graduate of the 2007 Clearwater Citizens Academy, and a leader of the Pinellas Biblical Citizens Task Force. I love Clearwater. Thank you to all of you for serving our city. Thank you to those of you who have responded to my email regarding the pending vote you have this week to sell public property to Scientology. As a voting constituent, I've learned to consider actions over words. Historical actions of Scientology regarding land purchase and use in Clearwater is that they have not upheld their words of wanting to be part of revitalizing downtown. Their historical actions have actually hijacked Clearwater's revitalization and growth. Selling them public property is not working with them. It's merely enlarging the monopoly stronghold that has stunted and maybe even strangled our city's progress for years. Their actions have let many properties sit idle for years. Yes, they've taken some recent action as a strategic move to help pave the way for their request of this land deal. But the likelihood of that continuing once they have the new property based on historical action is minimal. Taking a high risk on them honoring their word in this verbal deal is not a risk that we, the people, are in favor of. I expect my elected officials and city manager to do their due diligence when negotiating any public land deal, especially when the buyer has proven to be a detriment to our city. I was surprised that this has only become public knowledge in the last couple of weeks. When you were casting a vote, honestly, it was shocking. Why haven't you discussed this among yourselves in a previous public development board meeting or a council work session? The people of Clearwater do not want backdoor deals. Also, why is it okay that our mayor's and council members' requests are not included in this deal? I'm disappointed that some council members are turning a blind eye or naively stating that they don't know about Scientology's plans for this particular property and the adjacent one. The publications and videos, as Jill stated, are so easy to find. Are there any additional contractual plans in writing since that March 17th meeting? I can't find it in the public records database. If not, why would we enter into this land deal at this time? It's my understanding that the vacated right-of-way would not be guaranteed publicly accessible space, and that just seems irresponsible with taxpayer property, parking, and dollars. Did you know that the Planning and Development's comments stated that the vacation of the right-of-way was inconsistent with portions of both the comprehensive plan mobility policies and the downtown redevelopment plan? The PSTA's own multimodal transit center bus routing lists this right-of-way as an alternative option.
Thank you.
There's grace in changing your mind with new information. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here from the public desire to speak to an item that's not on today's agenda? Okay, with that, we'll move to item 4.1 on the agenda.
Present March business spotlights of Vital Life Fitness doing business as Rift Fitness.
Good afternoon, Jesus Nino, CRA Executive Director for the record. I have Ms. Tasha Hadley here to present the item.
Good afternoon. My name is Tasha Hadley, CRA Specialist. I'm excited to announce the third recipient business spotlight, Rift Fitness, owned and operated by Ben Gilbert. At Rift Fitness, Ben has created more than just a gym. He's built a community focused on strength, wellness, and personal growth. His approach blends flexibility, innovation, and recovery, giving Clearwater residents the tools they need for a healthy, balanced life. The gym, located at 1280 Court Street in our downtown CRA, offers open hour access and personalized hybrid training programs, along with wellness services like infrared saunas and ice baths. Whether someone's just getting started or is a seasoned athlete, Ben and his team meet them where they are and help guide them towards their goals. Ben's commitment to wellness goes beyond the walls of his facility. He is a proud partner in Clearwater's small business community, encouraging an active and healthier lifestyle throughout the city. His passion for helping people become the best versions of themselves is evident in every interaction. To celebrate Rift Fitness and Ben's contributions, the CRA has worked alongside public communications to prepare a short video showcasing his work, mission, and positive impact he's making in Clearwater. This recognition reflects the city's strategic priorities and economic opportunities and community well-being. This feature is being shared on the CRA's Business Spotlight Facebook page, and we also published an article earlier this month. You can also learn about Rift Fitness by visiting their website at riftfitness.com and then their Facebook and Instagram at Rift Fitness. At this time, we would like to invite the trustees to view the video presentation. Then the mayor will present a certificate of recognition to honor Ben and for his contributed service in our community.
I'm Ben Gilbert, and I'm the owner of Rift Fitness. So I've been open in Clearwater from the very beginning. COVID shut down so many businesses, shut me down. I was passionate about fitness from an early age, so I had a gym in my garage, and that provided me an opportunity because gyms, unfortunately, around the state of Florida were shutting down. The biggest thing that I enjoy about what I do is seeing the impact in other people's lives. We're a unique gym in that we don't just offer a gym membership. Our services are what's called stackable. We have an array of services based off of what people want. We have anything from an open gym membership that includes cold plunges and saunas, and then both of our locations, all the way up to personal training, which is going to include that open gym membership. It's going to include small group personal training. You get access to all of our wellness amenities. We have red light therapy, oxygen, massage chairs, compression, plunges, saunas. So if you're looking for great trainers and an amazing and clean, upbeat environment and a great community, this is the place for you.
Congratulations, man. Thank you for what you do for Clearwater. Yeah.
Thank you.
Very nice. Thanks. Thank you. Congratulations so much. Thank you. Great video.
That will move to item 4.2 on the agenda.
Approve payment to Duke Energy of Florida to replace overhead power lines with new underground distribution lines and facilities on Myrtle Avenue from Cleveland Street to Court Street in the amounts of $671,431.56 and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same.
Good afternoon, CRA trustees. Ann Lopez, CRA Assistant Director. Today we're seeking approval to authorize the payment of $671,431.56 to Duke Energy Florida to replace overhead power lines with new underground distribution lines on Myrtle Avenue from Cleveland Street to Court Street. This project spans 4 blocks and will take approximately 7 months after permit approval. The city, PSTA, and Duke Energy will collaborate to ensure a smooth transition, including restoring the right-of-way and coordinating private utility relocations. There will be a companion item presented later this afternoon from Public Works that includes the Duke Underground Conversion Agreement and Utility Reimbursement Agreement. Whew, that was a mouthful. The CRA has allocated $1 million in funds for this cost with Duke Energy, as well as joint user fees and restoration efforts. This key infrastructure improvement in downtown Clearwater aligns with our downtown redevelopment plan. By undergrounding these lines, we enhance aesthetics, we improve pedestrian safety, and increase property values. And we create a more inviting and resilient urban environment. And with that, I have myself and Tara Kivett from engineering be happy to answer any questions.
Vice Mayor?
So, am I right to assume that that CRA is going to pay 2/3, PSTA is paying 1/3 because, oh,
We'll let the lady with the answers.
I saw her coming up.
Sorry, Tara Kivett, City Engineer, Public Works. Yes, of the Duke invoice, that's a binding estimate that they gave us. And I'll be bringing a companion item later today. PSTA is paying 25% of that. We're paying 75% of it to cover the 4 blocks.
It's because we have the bigger property, right?
Well, it's
sorry?
going 3 blocks. It's going from City Hall all the way to Cleveland, and then PSTA just has theirs going from,
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Correct. Duke kind of said they only wanted to deal with one entity, so the city stepped up to do that. So now we're coordinating
Okay,
together.
all right.
In fact, just this morning, we had a great meeting with PSTA and the joint users to talk about that and looking at some economy of scale to deal with the joint users also.
I got it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Is anyone here from the public desires to speak to agenda item 4.2? Hearing none, is there a vote? Excuse me, a motion?
Motion to approve agenda item 4.2.
Second?
All those in favor?
All right.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. Agenda item 4.3.
Approve the property disposition strategy for the City of Clearwater and Clearwater Community Redevelopment Agency owned properties.
Guess I shouldn't be touching this equipment up here. Good afternoon again. Jesus Nino, CRA Executive Director for the record. I'm pleased to bring forward this property disposition strategy. That was a team effort put together by a very diverse team from multiple departments. This is a key step forward in our city and CRA's ongoing efforts to put underutilized properties back to productive use. This strategy is a result of a coordinated interdepartmental effort that marks the beginning of phase 2 of our property management initiative. As you're aware, phase 1 has been completed already. That was presented by Mr. Phil Kirkpatrick from the Economic Development Team. That basically focused on developing a comprehensive inventory and classification of all city and CRA-owned parcels. Each property there in that first phase was analyzed based on the zoning, size, current use, and redevelopment potential. This helped us basically prioritize which properties to bring forward to you to put in the property disposition strategy you have in your possession there, ensuring that our actions align with Clearwater's goals for economic development, housing, and community revitalization. We're now entering phase 2 of this, which is the marketing and solicitation of proposals. This includes a targeted outreach to attract qualified developers and community partners. Properties will be packaged strategically to encourage meaningful investment that reflects the city and CRA's long-term policies. Looking ahead at phase 3, which will be after this basically, proposals will be evaluated through a transparent multidisciplinary review process. Each submission will be assessed based on alignment with community goals, financial feasibility, development readiness, and the applicant's experience. Final recommendations will come back to the City Council or the CRA trustees, or depending who owns the property. At its core, this is a strategy basically to unlock the potential of land that we already owned by the city and the CRA. So they can be returned back to the tax rolls, which is basically the outcome that we want here, put them back to taxable value, and support housing and economic solutions, and to help build a stronger, more vibrant Clearwater community. Why now? The CRA was directed to lead this effort following phase 1's completion. The goal of creating a clear, actionable process rooted in transparency, community priorities, and alignment with the city's long-term vision. And basically, what are we doing? We developed a comprehensive, structured framework for how we evaluate, market, and dispose our city and CRA-owned properties. This document that you have in your possession is a living document designed to adapt over time as market conditions evolve and community needs shift. It's grounded in core principles. The first one is transparency in process and decision-making, so that every step is clear, fair, and open to public accountability. Then 2 is compliance with Florida statutes, the city's charter, applicable CRA redevelopment plans and other governing regulations. Then 3, alignment with the city's strategic goals, community development plans, long-term vision documents. Then finally, a focus on community impact, prioritizing outcomes that improve neighborhood well-being and serve the public purpose. This strategy basically ensures that surplus properties are disposed of legally, transparently, and intentionally, using best practices to maximize community benefit and encourage responsible land stewardship. I won't go through the entire summary of the document, but I'll give you a quick summary here. The property disposition strategy provides a step-by-step guide for identifying, evaluating, and disposing of surplus city land or CRA land. It outlines the legal framework, proposal, evaluation process, and scoring criteria. It also includes a phased timeline, affordable housing guidelines, and considerations like appraisals and long-term tax benefits. Where are we starting? We're beginning with 2 priority categories that are listed in your document that you have there. These are, first, the residential parcels. These are primarily smaller lots located in neighborhoods like North Greenwood that are best suited for single-family homes, duplexes, or other small multifamily housing. And these all fall within zoning, residential zoning districts, so you can't really do much more than residential on these parcels. These parcels will be carefully evaluated for their potential to support neighborhood revitalization and housing goals. We'll then release them in phases, basically in bunches, allowing us to meet housing needs while remaining responsive to basically market conditions and market demands. The next set of parcels are the undevelopable parcels. These are often referred to in the city charter as uneconomic remainders of land. These basically will also be disposed of concurrently with the residential parcels. The first crack will be given to basically abutting property owners. So basically we'll get the assessed value from the property appraiser, then we'll offer those abutting property owners if they want to purchase those basically undevelopable parcels. Both of these, again, these are being processed concurrently, and we have assigned a project manager to go ahead and undertake this. And this is a project that's already basically started, so we do have the property disposition team in place. This is the same team that put together this strategy. It's a very dynamic team from various departments. So we're already meeting again this week and next week just to make sure that we're getting the process implemented correctly with disposition of those residential lots and other parcels. How we decide again, this is going to be a multidisciplinary team. This team is composed of members from planning and development, public works, economic development, legal, and CRA staff. Again, this is the property disposition team. These disposition of the properties will be done through a competitive solicitation process, basically to try to recruit qualified developers with proven track records of delivering community-centered projects. I just want to mention this for the record too, and just for your attention here, especially when it comes to the residential lots, that many of these proposals we're going to start to receive, they're going to be requesting land donations. So I just want to make you aware of that. These often comes from our respected partners like Habitat for Humanity and Tampa Bay Neighborhood Housing Services and others. While these requests for donations, while they are requesting for donations of land, they do build quality homes that do get returned back to the tax rolls. So I just want to make you aware of that. And I guess for after the presentations, I'd like to hear your feedback on how you feel about these types of proposals because they will be coming in. They're going to be requesting donation of land. Transparency and accountability. All dispositions will follow legal guidelines with appraisals, environmental reviews, and public processes built in. Final recommendations, again, will come to the City Council, CRA trustees, depending on the property ownership. This will come with a detailed documentation and scoring that was basically evaluated by a committee, and accountability to make sure the public trust remains there. Next steps, the implementation process, again, is underway. The team is already starting to review basically the properties that we have. Marketing and requests for letters of interest for the first batch of properties are being prepared now. With that, staff is open for questions. Some of the team members and myself are here to answer any questions if you have them.
Is there anyone here from the public that desires to speak to agenda item 4.3? Seeing none, is there any discussion among the trustees?
I just have a few questions just to clarify, because it's a big document, and I just want to make sure that I understand this. So if I were to create a priority flow chart, it would start with surplusing the undevelopable parcels, then small-scale residential, then non-residential parcels, then downtown parcels, then large-scale attached dwellings. Does that sound right to you?
Yes, we tried to make it in order in here, and that was a question also the city manager asked me the other day. So I did want to make it clear that the first two batches are going to be the undevelopable and the residential. The rest are kind of listed in order, but from time to time, some parcels will be coming before you that are not in this particular order.
Okay, so then the timeline is not going to be completely sequential, meaning you're gonna address only these type of parcels and then move on to the next. It is gonna be flowing up and down a little bit as we
Yes.
progress. Okay. And then let's see, hold on, sorry. Are we considering at all if we need an outside source for that marketing for the usage? We're talking about the marketing of, trying to figure out proper usage and all that. Are we considering at all outsourcing that?
Not at this time, but if we need to do that, we'll take it under consideration. We'll bring Joelle's team, the public communications, and our marketing folks to the table for this entire strategy. And if we need it, we'll propose it to the city manager.
Okay. And then I just want to confirm, the color coding that you have on page 11, 12, and 13, that's just so we can visually assign all the properties to a specific site. There's no other significance to those color codes?
Correct.
Okay. And I think the last one is, when we're looking at the scoring sheet on page 15, under the comprehensive site and building plans, landscaping and design perspectives, I would like to see adding to that a public art component. Not to ding anyone for not having that, but since it's commercial property, maybe assign 1 or 2 points if they're willing to put public art on their commercial property.
We can do that,
I
especially
would
for the
like to explore
downtown
that.
properties.
Okay. That's it?
Any other discussion among the trustees? If not, is there a motion?
Move to approve agenda item 4.3.
Second.
All those in favor?
Right?
Opposed? Unanimous. Agenda item 4.4.
Approve a North Greenwood commercial grant for Tori and Timothy Charles located at 1215 North Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue, Clearwater, Florida, 33755, in an amount not to exceed $74,516.91, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same.
I'm going to bring Ms. Julia Baltas up here to present this particular item, then the next item after that will be Vicky Shire.
Good afternoon, Julia Baltas, CRA Specialist. The item I have before you is a North Greenwood commercial grant request for Tori and Timothy Charles, located at 1215 North Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue, Clearwater, Florida, 33755, in an amount not to exceed $74,516.91. On January 7th, 2025, CRA staff received a grant application from Tori and Timothy Charles outlining building and site improvements totaling $78,266.91. The applicants have opted to complete up to 13 hours of community service through the Clearwater Urban Leadership Coalition, which would reduce their required match by up to 50%. If approved, the improvements must be maintained for at least 3 years, and proof of project completion must be provided within 365 days of the grant award. Upon approval, CRA staff will work with the property owners to finalize a grant agreement outlining the terms and conditions. All supporting documentations, invoices, and payments must be submitted and reviewed by staff prior to disbursement. The North Greenwood Commercial Grant Program is designed to incentivize commercial property and business owners within the North Greenwood CRA to invest in building, structural, and site improvements. The program aims to enhance the visual appeal and functionality of the area, stimulate economic growth, and create a business-friendly environment, which aligns with both the North Greenwood CRA mission and the City of Clearwater strategic plan. I have Tori Charles here, and we are happy to answer any questions you all may have.
Okay, is there anyone here from the public that desires to speak to agenda item 4.4? If not, is there any, yep, we have one, okay. Please come forward.
Good afternoon, Gloria Campbell. I just wanted to say how excited we are. We actually have 2 of our businesses in the North Greenwood CRA that will before you today. As you know, economic development is our thing, and this is a great opportunity. We work with both of them, and so we thank you so much, and we are looking forward to them being approved.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Any discussion among the trustees? Vice Mayor?
Just a comment, you know, this is why we made the CRA. This is what we made it for, is to really help that area to get revitalized. And I like seeing the first steps on this, and I'll be looking forward to seeing the finished result.
Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Menino.
Thank you, Mayor. Well said, and I was going to support the same thoughts. I do want to commend staff on building in the flexibility of allowing customer service hours through our CRA. I think that's vitally important. I've talked to a handful of people in our community and how important that piece is and how challenging the equity piece is to overcome sometimes. So thank you to staff for finding that flexibility in the code. I'm excited about where we're at in its infancy for our Greenwood CRA, and that this, your city and council are willing to stand up and fight to help it keep moving forward.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Now, is there a motion?
Move to approve agenda item 4.4.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Congratulations. Move to agenda item 4.5.
Approve a North Greenwood commercial grant for Killarney and Six Investment Group, Inc., located at 1115 North Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue and 1107 North Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue, Clearwater, Florida, 33755, in an amount not to exceed $75,000, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same.
Good afternoon, Vicki Shire, CRA Division Manager. CRA received a North Greenwood commercial grant application from Culinary Six Investment Group for properties located at 1107 and 1115 North Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue. Staff recommends approval of a grant not to exceed $75,000 and total financial assistance to provide exterior and interior improvements to both properties. 1107 will have 5 salon suites and 3 food courts, and 1115 will have an event hall and 5 office suites. The North Greenwood Commercial Grant Program aims to enhance visual appeal, functionality of the area, and to stimulate economic growth, which aligns with both the North Greenwood CRA mission and the city's strategic plan. If approved, CRA staff will finalize a grant agreement, outline the terms, conditions, and the applicant's performance measures as stated in the program guidelines. I have Mr. Gainey here, and we're happy to answer any questions.
I want to hear from the public desire to speak to agenda item 4.5. If none, is there any discussion among the trustees? No discussion, is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve agenda item 4.5.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous.
Congratulations.
I normally don't deviate from the agenda to make comments, but we all know that CRAs are under scrutiny in Tallahassee, so we've been up there advocating to keep CRAs intact the way they are and the way these are operating like today. And the human impact that we see today when these folks are coming up there asking for assistance is incredibly important. So any help any of you can give us in sending that message to Tallahassee and convincing folks not to disrupt the great progress we're making with our CRAs here in Clearwater is greatly appreciated. Move to item 4.6 on the agenda.
Downtown revitalization.
Thank you for saying those words, Mayor. As far as the downtown revitalization, I really don't have too much. This is mostly your item to discuss items that you wish you want to discuss. But I do want to let you know that we've been getting a lot of interest as far as the reimagined library concept, call for development concepts. We are working very closely with our legal team and our procurement staff to make sure that we're doing everything by the book. we're basically pretending we're on a cone of silence right now. And then once the true 30-day advertisement is put out there, then we'll really be into that. But just want to thank the city attorney's office for all their assistance and making sure we're doing things the right way. As questions come in, we're getting with our procurement folks and answering those questions and posting them online. Other than that, we're just moving forward. And as far as what's going on up in Tallahassee, thank you for all your assistance on that part. I can tell you that from us, on our side, we do everything by the book. We have a city attorney's office to also make sure that we're doing everything by the book. So thank you.
Any questions for the director? No? That's your report too, I guess?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, thank you. Okay, and is there anything else to come before the trustees? If not, then we will adjourn the March 31, 2025 meeting of the City of Clearwater Community Redevelopment Agency. We'll recess for just a few minutes before we begin the work session.
bad it was.
You sounded
yeah.
Asian,
Oh, no, that was bad.
so. Hey, you stop it over there. I'm glad you're feeling better.
Thank you.
This time I'll call to order the March 31, 2025 work session of the Clearwater City Council. This time we'll move to item 2.1 on the agenda.
This town quarterly update by Susan Crockett.
Good afternoon, Susan Crockett, Ruth Eckerd Hall. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon, and thank you for your time so we can update you on the beautiful venue that we have next door. We are seeing healthy growth with the venue. In the last 6 months, the attendance has doubled what it was the first 6 months that the venue was open, so it's definitely going in the right direction. We're also edging towards that first $1 million in rebate to the city. I think going into this weekend, we were at $940,000 total, so that's also good news. The positive feedback we've been getting, not only from artists and their staff, their tours, but also from the public has been wonderful. I would probably say people can be brutal on social media, but we're probably about 100 great comments to maybe one little complaint. So very happy with that. We had our first EDM show of the trees, and it was amazingly successful. We had over 4,500 people come out, and the influencers that were in the building, I can tell you the next day on social media, and my favorite quote was, "This is the venue in Florida now for EDM." And so we're taking them up on that. We've got some more scheduled, and the next one is Lane 8, which will be on April 12th. And it was such an exciting night. I do want to kind of share with you for a moment. You can see the excitement that evening. I think that gives you a taste on why the influencers were talking about, that this is an experience unlike the other venues where EDM is playing in this part of Florida. And I will mention that out of the 4,500 plus people, 40% came from outside of Pasco, Pinellas, and Hillsborough. So we saw a ton of people from the East Coast, a lot from Central, Gainesville, Orlando, even a few from Pensacola. So it definitely is starting to have a real following for this type of programming. And as you can tell, very young audiences. I never felt so old. As of today, we have 47 events that are confirmed in 2025. We're still booking. We have a lot of open windows. But at this point, we're at 47 events. We had our first school time this morning, which was 400-plus children from our local schools and homeschoolers came out to see Roger Day, and thank you, Mayor, for coming. On our next quarterly update, we're going to focus on the community engagement piece of the venue, as we've got a lot of great things that are happening. But speaking of the community engagement, I do want to let you know that the sound system that Ruth Eckerd Hall purchased went up. It's in. First concert was Foreigner. It's unbelievable, fantastic sound. And the beautiful part of that is between the sound system that we put in and the lighting system and the screens, it is now so much more affordable for organizations to use the venue, which was one of our goals. Other investments we've made in the facility to date, backstage, we've reconfigured some doors. We've got some work going on right now to kind of make the space as usable as we can. We've put in dimmers and blue lights and things that just make it, again, more efficient to run. We have a sunshade that is out in, it has been designed. It's being designed by Inter-America Stage, which is the company I believe the city used to do some of the stage tech installation when the building was first built. And I will tell you, it's been difficult to find someone willing to take on the project, but I think because this was theirs to begin with, they've stepped up, they've developed a concept, and production is happening. It's a long, long road, though. And then in the future, what we're looking at doing is bathrooms, trying to solve that. Always, there's not enough restrooms. Right now, we're spending about $2 a head to bring bathrooms in. So we're looking at more maybe of a semi-permanent solution, working with city staff, perhaps even constructing something in the future. We're also looking at upping the electrical power to the remote areas of the venue, the plaza, and up near the library. Because right now we have about 12 to 20 generators on an event, and obviously that's not the best way to do it. So we're looking at doing that in the future. And finally, I just want to thank the city staff, Parks and Rec, Clearwater Police, the fire department. It has been such a pleasure. They've been working so together as a team and just really communicative, and you know that's key to the building and the partnership succeeding. So we really appreciate that. Any questions?
Questions from the council?
Just
Councilmember
a
Neal?
comment, maybe to correct you, because I have had a lot of conversations with people as well about this EDM movement, and I think you said maybe the #1 in Florida. People have been telling me the #1 in not the southeast U.S., one in the country. I mean, it's I think we might have accidentally struck a bit of a nerve here, and I think in a great way, in a good way. I look forward to seeing Ruth Eckerd capitalize on that sector, and that brings a little more diversity to our downtown. I think it's a great thing. I had a couple things that were written down, and you hit them on the head, power infrastructure upgrades. I find that in our whole Coachman Park area, with some of our vendors have had some of those same discussions, as well as bathrooms. We've been at shows where, gosh, I'd be afraid of anything over 9,000 there, and bathrooms are definitely a problem. So I appreciate you putting the attention and focus to those upgrades.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Anything else? Vice Mayor?
Just a comment. Good job. I enjoy it. That's one of my favorite places to go. I'm so glad we got that built. I mean, it was a long time coming, and a couple times it didn't look like it was going to happen. But we got it built, and we made the right choice with Ruth Eckerd. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Well, I'll just summarize, too, from my experience. I had a chance to speak to the Ruth Eckerd Hall Board of Directors last week, and just thank you all for all you've done. In the beginning, I've had 10 years of history opening sports facilities around the country and large ones, and you know, reality is not always the way we thought it would be back when we were planning and designing. And I'd so appreciate Ruth Eckerd Hall's willingness to work with our city team and our city team. The Parks and Rec, Police, and all of the city manager leading the effort to kind of, you know, tweak some things and to make it the right way and getting that cost down on use and all those things that have really helped this facility flourish the way we've worked together in the past. And the diversity of programming, I know early on, some of the acts we were seeing, a lot of them were acts that normally play Ruth Eckerd Hall, but to see how that has transformed in the last 6 months, like you're talking about the EDM, the concert this morning with the kids. There was another, I forget the name of the performer, but there was one performance over there in the last 6 months. It was families, tons of families enjoying the program together. And they knew all the words to the songs, and I didn't even know any of the words to any of the songs, but they had a big following, and that's what I'm seeing. A lot of these performers are coming in, they may not be household names, but they've got big following. I'm also interested to see that we've got some fairly big name acts coming in, Old Dominion's coming in. They've toured with Kenny Chesney in large stadiums in the past, and the progress in the last 6 to 12 months has just been very impressive. And I will leave it with what you shared when I was at the board meeting. Ms. Crockett said, we've only just begun to achieve great things. We are an extraordinary destination, extraordinary community, and this daycare sound is becoming a jewel for not just our community, but for the entire country. And thank you for your work in doing that.
Thank you for allowing us to do it.
Yeah. Thank you. Vice Mayor?
One last comment. The new sound system you have is excellent. And for anybody out there that has been a while ago and listened to, you've upgraded now to this great, I talked to Bobby about it, and then I was at that first concert where you had it up, and the clarity on it is so amazing. And yeah, I know it's going to be anywhere in the park, even the front row. I mean, I had, sitting as close to the stage, I always had like a muddled, it was too much sound on some events. This thing was clear as a bell. I mean.
And I will say, they're known for being able to control where the sound is directed at a level that's never been able to be done before with systems. It really is truly state-of-the-art. We're the first outdoor venue, I think, on this half of the United States with it, so.
Wow.
We're excited.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. With that, I'm going to ask the council to consider moving. We've got some invited speakers today on agenda item 14.1 who are coming in from out of town to present to us.
Okay.
So we can take these speakers, let them present, and then come back to discussion, regular part of the agenda, if that's the preference of the council. But I'd like to go ahead and take these speakers now.
That's fine.
Good. Okay. With that, I'll call forward Florida Surgeon General Dr. Ledepo, UF University of Florida College of Public Health, Dr. Ashley Maitland, and Florida Dental Association Representative Dr. Muller. Yeah.
Dr. Ledepo,
Yeah,
yes,
come on
go
up.
ahead.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
If we come up all the time, we can have a grudge match. Settle it that way. I'm Dr. Joe Latipo. It's nice to be chatting with you all today. Dr. Mallon is a colleague of mine at the University of Florida, and she'll be providing more review of the literature, the scientific literature. This is one of the areas of interest for her in her research. And I serve as a Surgeon General. I have a background in public health. Most of my interest is actually cardiovascular disease prevention, but I've been pulled into some other areas as needed over the last few years. And before I was here at the University of Florida, I was a tenured professor at UCLA, mostly doing clinical trials, also taking care of patients, hospitalized patients at Ronald Reagan Hospital at UCLA in Los Angeles, in West Los Angeles. So we've had a few of these meetings now, and it's always very interesting to see how the commissioners, the leaders, respond to our discussions. Frankly, sometimes it seems like we didn't need to be there at all, and that goes both ways. Sometimes commissioners are very clear on how they feel about the issue, oftentimes related to, well, do I actually have the right to put something in the water that is a treatment, a medical therapy for people? And some people feel like, actually, I don't feel comfortable doing that. And sometimes commissioners just are, very, very clear that this is established practice, and we're going to keep the fluoride in our water. And that's the position. And it seems like it wouldn't have mattered if I said anything, or if I talked for 2 hours. So it's been interesting. It's been interesting looking at it. And so I was thinking about what to share with you guys, and I think what I will share is I'm gonna maybe do maybe a bit of an experiment. So I'm going to share, I'm going to invite you all to separate yourself just temporarily. I'm not asking you to change your minds. I'm asking you to consider the possibility of changing your mind if you're in the camp of wanting to keep the fluoride in the water. Again, I'm not asking you to change your mind. I'm just asking you to consider opening yourself up to the possibility. And if you're willing to do that, then I'm actually very curious to see what's going to happen. So I'd love to maybe hear some feedback after everyone votes. So if you can join me in this little mental experiment here, so you've clearly heard both sides. It's been in the news a lot. How can people have such diametrically opposed positions on something? It's like, are they reading the same books written in the same language? And somehow that's the situation. And in terms of these sides, clearly there are many people who not only are sort of agree that fluoride, adding it to water, is beneficial for dental health and is like really good public health and therefore should stay. And we have that side. And then there's sort of on the other end, there's research that is shared about an association that's been found between fluoride exposure, whether it's from the water or from other sources, and very important outcomes, very important health outcomes, particularly for children and for pregnant women. And in these discussions, sometimes the people on the first side who want to keep the fluoride in the water, they sometimes will dismiss all of the research. Whether it's that the research was in all these other countries that have higher levels of fluoride, or that it's junk science. It's just different. They'll dismiss all of the research. Usually that's what they do. And I want to invite you to think about the possibility that all of the research showing harms is wrong, all of it is incorrect. Because if that's not the case, then you have to consider that you are supporting a policy for everyone that may not be good for some people. And I think that's actually, even if a person, a leader such as yourselves, doesn't reach a side, one side or the other, it should be in, it shouldn't be in. You either have to believe that all of the scientific studies that have been published, all of the different researchers from all different countries, including the United States, are all wrong. And it's all junk science, even though some of this research has been published in good medical journals. You have to believe that all of that is rubbish. Or you have to be comfortable doing something for everyone in your community that could be hurting some people in your community. And so those are the two possibilities if you come down to a position of, again, you don't have to pick a side, but however you vote does have implications for what you believe about the information you're receiving. And I will submit to you that it is very unlikely that however wonderful fluoride is for our teeth, that every single researcher and every single published study that has found a harm of fluoride exposure in children is wrong, junk, useless. You have to take that, you have to believe, or you have to be comfortable with harming some people in your community by doing something, by adding something to the water that you think is a good idea for everyone. So one of those, for if you will, a sort of logical or consistent position has to be correct. So So I'm hoping that some of you might have agreed to participate in this little experiment of just temporarily, you don't need to change your mind, just temporarily opening yourself up to the possibility that, that your position might not be the best position. I'm going to share one other thing with you, and I was very struck by this. So there's a publication called MedPage Today. Pretty much, if you talk to any doctor, they know what MedPage Today is. And MedPage Today is allied with the same organizations, professional organizations, that people who support fluoridation because these professional organizations support it. So they're allied with the American Academy of Pediatrics, with the American Medical Association. They're allied with where most of my colleagues in clinical medicine are, or society members of. So I share that with you just to say that, they are an organization that has taken the mainstream, if you will, position on every medical issue. And that is MedPage Today. And I read MedPage Today because it keeps me up to date on the happenings in medicine. And they ran an editorial that I was gobsmacked when I read. And I will read you, and this was an editorial, so it's not the position of MedPage Today, but I will read you just a little bit from it. And this editorial was written by pediatrician. I was honestly floored when I read it, because they don't typically, viewpoint diversity is not is not what they're known for. They take the professional society position on things. So this article was written by a pediatrician at Stanford, and this was like a couple weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. So I'll read for like 2 minutes. So please bear with me here, and thanks for obliging me. So, the fluoride in our water is completely safe, I heard myself saying with practiced confidence. Is it? How can you be so sure? The patient's father asked, his skepticism cutting through my certainty. The question lingered uncomfortably. No one becomes a pediatrician expecting controversy, but somewhere along the way, our field had become a battleground. Everything is being questioned, from vaccines to nutrition guidelines, and yes, even water fluoridation. My initial reaction was to dismiss these doubts, but a nagging feeling remained. How can I promise complete safety? The family skepticism forced me to confront an essential distinction in modern medicine. The difference between no harm and no known harm. Although this may seem like a sleight of hand, a magician's trick, it represents a fundamental shift in how we calculate risk. So then this pediatrician goes on to review some of the evidence that has shown harms, and she ends her article by saying, this brings us to the foundational principle of medicine. First, do no harm. Gradually, we've shifted from prove it's safe to prove it's harmful, inverting the burden of proof in our public health interventions. While this reversal might be justified when benefits clearly outweigh potential risks, improvements in modern dental care make this benefit calculation less clear for water fluoridation. The question isn't simply whether fluoridation offers benefits, but whether its continued universal application meets our ethical obligation to minimize harm, no matter how small. You raise important points. I wish I'd told the father. The recommendation for universal fluoridation should be reevaluated. And in fact, it should be reevaluated. And fortunately, it is being reevaluated. And however the steps, however many different detours we take along the way, I'll tell you on this day, I am certain that we are at the end of universal water fluoridation in this country. I have no doubt. I've read the scientific papers that evaluate the different risks. I've read scientific papers that evaluate benefits. There's just too much uncertainty for this to be a public health intervention. It's definitely going out. I don't know what the timeline is, but ultimately, this is where we are we're headed as a country. I really have no doubt. And I think, again, this pediatrician is an example. As more and more people acquaint themselves with the evidence, they'll become less and less comfortable with an unequivocal support for this as a public health intervention. All right, thank you. This one. Great, thank you very much. So I think Dr. Mallon's going to share some more.
The council members have any
yeah,
questions
sure.
from Surgeon General?
I mean, maybe just if you could point to the systemic ingestion of how that affects certain different, even the cardiology system, neurology system. Oh, I didn't turn my mic on. There we go. But just how fluoride for the dental community makes sense topically,
Yeah.
but then ingesting it, how it affects or adversely affects just all those other systems from neurology, cardiology, nephrology,
Yeah.
your toxicologists are even seeing different things. Maybe just to shine some light on that as well.
I think it's a really good way of thinking about it, right? You know, we want strong, healthy teeth. I mean, everybody wants strong, healthy teeth. And there are things we can do, right? It depends on our diet, our hygiene, right? Brushing, flossing. Fluoride strengthens teeth. But it's really very different when you take it in as water, because then it's not limited to your teeth. And even if there are some benefits to taking it systemically, it goes everywhere. And there's research, for example, that shows that it may be affecting thyroid function. There's research that shows that it may be affecting the pineal gland in terms of calcification of the pineal gland. This is a gland that regulates our sleep and other functions. There's also uptake in the bones, and this is, you don't need it in your bones. Like no one needs fluoride in their bones. And then there are other organs potentially, and of course the one that the guidance that we released in the Department of Health some months ago is the fact that it's also absorbed by your brain, by our neurons. And the populations that are most vulnerable to that are kids. Everybody knows, right? You got to be careful with lead with children. I mean, there's some very, very serious consequences of heavy metal exposure. Mercury. We all are adversely affected by mercury, but you really, really, really don't want a child, a developing brain, or a fetus in a mom's belly to be exposed to those things, because during development, those individuals, those babies, those children, those kids are exquisitely sensitive to the toxic harms of those substances. So that's the trick with I mean, that's you have to have a very, very high threshold for safety if you're going to be taking something all through your body, rather than just where we absolutely positively would want to concentrate it. Yeah.
Dr. Latipo, thank you. Thank you very much for being here. I know that you're extremely busy. I appreciate you making the trip down to give us your presentation and give us some more information, so thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Oh, yeah, please, sir.
Well, you can go ahead. I do have two questions.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yes, and thank you so much for being here. I know there's a lot of things on your agenda and a lot of places you could be and should be, but making Clearwater a priority to come chat with us is greatly appreciated. I know publicly you have stated in the past that you were once on the other side of this discussion, and you were 100% for fluoridation in the water program. Would you point to any one specific study or one specific area that truly flipped your opinion and drove you to that other side?
Actually, thank you for that question. That actually points to where I started, which is that it wasn't one particular study. It was the multiple studies that have identified and published in good scientific journals from different research groups. There are just too many researchers who have done this analysis and found neurotoxic harms and effects in children and pregnant women to ignore it for me. I mean, I cannot ignore that personally. Again, in the setting, you either have to believe, to continue to support doing it, you either have to believe that every single one of those studies is wrong, or you have to be comfortable that some of them may be right, but it's okay to do as a public health intervention. And I don't think that's, I don't agree with either one of those positions personally.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm consider myself a lifetime learner on a lot of issues, but this is an issue that I really didn't know much about until Councilmember Cotton brought it before us. But I've learned a lot in the last 30 days or so from both sides, folks who want to keep it in and folks who want to take it out. But I do have a couple questions for you. It would seem to me that the state of Florida, who highly regulates water and water quality, that we would address the issue as a state and not go county to county, city to city, like has been going on all around the state, and getting different results by going around. Why is the strategy to come locality by locality instead of to address it on a statewide issue?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I personally think that it's a issue of perspective. So some people, like Commissioner Simpson, our agriculture commissioner, in his bill, he's proposed to end it on a state level. And so that's the approach that he's taken. I'm grateful that they're thinking about these issues because I think it's an important issue. Philosophically, and I support his efforts and as the agriculture commissioner, and I appreciate that they've taken it on. Philosophically, my own personal position is that I like power to the people. I like to give the people, it doesn't matter in my mind for Clearwater today what might be happening in Tallahassee a few weeks from now. I think it's important that people, really struggle and wrestle with these issues, whatever the issues are, and reach decisions for their own communities. Again, I think it's just a matter of perspective.
I asked that in part because over the past 30 days, overwhelmingly, most of the comment I've gotten on this issue has come from people who are not residents of the city of Clearwater. They do not drink city of Clearwater. They're coming from outside, not just Clearwater, but outside Pinellas County to weigh in on this issue. I just haven't heard over the last 30 days at least really much on either side to talk about the issue. So I think it is, it's a statewide issue that maybe would be better addressed by the legislature. It sounds like they're considering it, and the session ends pretty soon, so maybe they will. Second question I have for you is, the studies that have been done that show that it's adverse to public health, I guess would assume that folks regularly consume tap water. And I'm drinking, maybe at my own peril, tap water here today from City of Clearwater. But I noticed that we've got at least five or six folks here who are not drinking bottled water. I see the delegation is with you. You've got 3 bottled waters with them. There's filtered water, and those studies, do they take into account that I think overwhelmingly now people don't drink much tap water at all. They're drinking bottled water, filtered water. They're able to make that own choice. If they don't want to drink fluoridated water, then they choose, which many of them do. I wish we weren't consuming as much plastic, being a coastal city, and put it in there. But that's the reality, is fewer and fewer people today are consuming tap water. Was that taken into account in the studies that you're referring to?
Yeah, that's a great question. Dr. Mallon will talk more about this in detail. So most of the studies look at fluoride levels that are in the blood or in the urine. And when you do it that way, you're getting a sense of total fluoride exposure. So even if you might be drinking bottled water here, maybe you cook, maybe your wife cooks, my wife doesn't, I'm a terrible cook. But my wife, when she cooks, she'll use the water from the tap. We have a whole home filter. It doesn't take fluoride out, but she'll use that water, and the kids will eat that. So in other words, even if you're having bottled water, people tend to still be exposed to water from the city. And these studies, it will generally, they will use the level of fluoride in your body as a measure of exposure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions, Surgeon General? If not, then-
I have one request for you. I don't expect it to be met, but I will be very pleasantly surprised if this is the case. You know, I asked you guys to participate in an experiment. Whenever you guys vote in a few days, if there is anyone who felt that it should stay in, and after participating in that experiment is unsure about whether it should stay in, based on, you know, kind of our discussion here, I would really appreciate hearing that feedback. Maybe Commissioner Cotton, you could relay that to me. I would just be really curious. And I say this as a guy who you know, I'm very fortunate in that I don't, I'm very, open-minded isn't the right word, but I found that folks tend to really hold on to their positions, and honestly, that's what I found to be the case. And so, if that doesn't happen for anyone in here, if you could let Commissioner Cotton know, and he can communicate it to our team, I'd love to hear. You know, I'm still learning in this whole sort of political policy realm after just being a university professor. But, and you know, as a professor, you're used to changing your mind with data. So thank you for humoring me, should that happen. All right.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Professor?
Hi. Oh, here. Okay. I was wondering where my slides would be. Hi. Thank you so much for having me here today. It's really great to be here and to have the opportunity to present for you all. My name is Dr. Ashley Mallon. I'm an epidemiologist and an assistant professor at the University of Florida. And I have studied fluoride in human health. Oh, there's my, okay, I'm going to look over there. And I've studied fluoride in human health since early 2013. So I've been researching this topic now for over a decade. And I don't have any conflicts of interest or disclosures related to the material in this presentation. So for today's presentation, I'm going to discuss what fluoride and fluoridation additives are. These things are different. I'm also going to talk a little bit about some of the impacts of fluoride exposure on health in general. I know Commissioner Cotton was asking about what does it do when it's ingested into the body, what happens there. So I'll talk about effects on our bones and our pineal gland. I'll also talk about the current state of the science on fluoride exposure and neurodevelopment, because that's really where a lot of the recent focus has been. And the current state of the science does show that chronic fluoride exposure in early life is associated with worse child neurodevelopment, even at levels that are commonly encountered in the United States. So I'm going to go over that research today. So fluoride is a mineral that naturally occurs in rock and soil, and it can leach into the drinking water and then naturally occur from rock and soil. However, fluoride can also be produced industrially, and there are 3 chemicals that the NSF approves for community water fluoridation. These are fluorosilicic acid, sodium fluorosilicate, and sodium fluoride. And these are produced, these are byproducts of phosphate fertilizer production. So this is what's being added to the drinking water. It's different than the naturally occurring fluoride ions that we may encounter in the environment. The recommended concentration for fluoride in drinking water is 0.7 milligrams per liter, and it was previously a range of 0.7 to 1.2 milligrams per liter, but that was lowered in 2015 because so many youth in the United States have something that's called dental fluorosis, and that's an outward manifestation of excess fluoride exposure. So when there's too much fluoride going into the body during the development of the teeth, then it impacts how these teeth are formed. And you can see it can range from mild to just having white spots on the teeth to more severe cases with staining and deep pitting of the enamel. The most recently released data from the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey shows that approximately 70% of children and adolescents have some form of dental fluorosis. It is more mild in most cases, but that's also a conservative estimate because children and adolescents who have what we call questionable fluorosis, meaning they weren't sure if they had fluorosis or not, they're scored as not having fluorosis. So the prevalence is high. Research shows that fluoridation chemicals can also be contaminated with metals. Hydrofluorosilicic acid has been shown to contain arsenic, lead, and aluminum, and sodium fluoride has been shown to contain barium and aluminum. And the aluminum levels are quite high in both of these cases, but more so for the sodium fluoride. Other research shows that when combined with disinfecting agents like chlorine or chloramine that's used to treat the water, fluoride can leach lead from lead-bearing plumbing into the drinking water, so that this co-exposure of the community or the disinfecting agents with the fluoride can cause the lead to leach. Of course, we know fluoride is beneficial for cavity prevention. There's so much research showing, especially when applied topically to the teeth, so brushing with it, rinsing with it, it's quite beneficial. But when ingested, fluoride has an affinity for our calcium-containing tissue, so it accumulates in our bones, our teeth, and our other calcium-containing organs and glands, including the pineal gland and also the developing brain. As Dr. Latipo had mentioned, fluoride has quite complex effects on our bones, so it can increase bone mineral density of certain bones, but also contribute to changes in bone quality that can contribute to bone weakness and increased risk of fracture. And we've seen these in studies that are with fluoride exposure levels similar to the United States. There was a recent one among postmenopausal women in Sweden that found increased risk of hip and major osteoporotic fracture from fluoride levels that we commonly encounter. It was about a 1 part per million concentration in their drinking water. I currently have an NIH grant to examine potential impacts of fluoride exposure on pineal gland function and child neurodevelopment. One of the reasons why I was interested in looking at pineal gland function was because there was a National Research Council report in 2006. So the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine, they reviewed health effects of fluoride exposure in various parts of the body. They concluded that fluoride is an endocrine disruptor in the broad sense of altering normal endocrine function or response, and our endocrine system being, the system that regulates our glands and our hormonal functions. In particular, they said fluoride is likely to cause decreased melatonin production and to have other effects on normal pineal gland function, which in turn can contribute to a variety of effects in humans. And so that's why I started looking into this topic, because no one had conducted studies on pineal gland function in humans. And so we know from existing studies that fluoride accumulates highly in the pineal gland. And this is a small gland. It's located outside of the base of the brain, right outside the blood-brain barrier, and it is responsible for producing melatonin, which is a hormone, again, that regulates our sleep function. Fluoride concentrations in the pineal gland are associated with what's called pineal gland calcification, which is essentially a hardening of the pineal gland, and that's associated with sleep disturbances and neurological problems, including Alzheimer's disease, schizophrenia, pediatric primary brain tumor, and multiple sclerosis. And I've referenced all those studies that show this association there. And so we also know that fluoride can enter the developing brain, and there's been evidence of this in animal studies dating back 30 years. This was a study that inspired my whole career, really. It was published in 1995, and it found that rats that were exposed to higher levels of sodium fluoride in early development developed ADHD-like symptoms. And the lead author of this study, Dr. Mullenix, she was actually fired after publishing this, reportedly because she went against the status quo in doing so, and it could potentially jeopardize funding support for her institution. And so after that study was published, nobody looked into this question again for nearly 30 years. And so I decided to conduct the first human study on this topic and published that in 2015. And we looked at exposure to fluoridated water and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder prevalence among children and adolescents in the United States. We found that parents reported higher rates of medically diagnosed ADHD in their children in states in which a greater proportion of people receive fluoridated water from public water supplies. And so this was a preliminary study, and our main conclusion was that someone should probably look into this. And then in the years following, there were studies that looked at relatively low fluoride exposure levels and different neurodevelopmental outcomes. So prior to that, there had only been studies conducted in other countries that found that high levels of fluoride were associated with reduced IQ in children. But these two studies looked at relatively low exposures. And so one was conducted by a research group that looked at fluoride exposure and IQ in Mexico City, and then another one in a nationally representative Canadian cohort. And both studies found that each 1 milligram per liter increase in maternal urinary fluoride across pregnancy was associated with about a 4 to 5 point IQ reduction in the children. And so they looked at fluoride in the pregnant women's urine in this case, which again addresses that, it's from all sources, maybe from bottled water, maybe from tap water, maybe from black tea can be high in fluoride as well. And here are several other studies conducted in North America. They all show that higher prenatal fluoride exposure is associated with worse child neurodevelopment. So things like increases in symptoms of ADHD, worse executive functioning, and these are conducted in Canada and Mexico. And so one of the questions that emerged from this research is whether the exposure levels would be comparable to what pregnant women in the United States may encounter, because these women are in Mexico and Canada. Is that even relevant to us? And I led a study that was published in 2023 where we looked at fluoride in the urine of pregnant women in Los Angeles County, and we found that their urinary fluoride levels were nearly identical to the pregnant women living in fluoridated communities in Canada, and also quite similar to those living in Mexico City in the studies that I just described. So another thing to keep in mind from those studies is that fluoride was measured in different ways in the different studies. So in some cases, they looked at fluoride in water. In some cases, they examined it in urine, as I mentioned, and then in other studies, they looked at it in food. And the findings are consistent regardless of how fluoride was measured. And so I talked about prenatal exposures, but there's also research on exposures during infancy. And so this study looked at fluoride exposure from infant formula and child IQ in a Canadian birth cohort. And they found that an increase of 0.5 milligrams per liter in water fluoride concentration in infancy was associated with about a 9-point decrease in IQ among the formula-fed children and about a 6-point decrease in IQ among the breastfed children. So a 9-point decrease in IQ, that can shift someone from being in the average range to the below average range. It's a large magnitude of association. And an increase of 0.5 milligrams per liter, that's about the difference between living in a fluoridated versus in a non-fluoridated community in terms of exposure. In August, the National Toxicology Program, this was last August, they finally published their long-awaited comprehensive systematic review on early life fluoride exposure and child neurodevelopment, and that included all of the studies published by 2023. They included 72 studies on fluoride and IQ in total, and of those, 64 found that higher fluoride was associated with lower child IQ. When they restricted it to only studies they determined to be high quality, they identified 19, and 18 of those found that higher fluoride was associated with lower child IQ. So there isn't complete consistency in the literature. There are some studies that don't show an association, but it's about 89 to 95% of the studies do show that higher fluoride exposure is associated with lower child IQ, depending on how they divide that. And the authors of the report concluded there is moderate confidence in the body of evidence that estimated fluoride exposure is inversely associated with IQ in children, meaning that higher fluoride is associated with lower IQ. They said this applies at a minimum to those living in areas where fluoride in drinking water is known to be at or above 1.5 milligrams per liter. So this is double the recommended level. That's what their conclusion applied to. They said associations between drinking water fluoride levels below 1.5 milligrams per liter and child IQ remain unclear. So they weren't sure if the levels in the drinking water currently were associated with child IQ. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. They didn't feel they had enough to make a determination either way. However, they said it's plausible that pregnant women and children living in optimally fluoridated communities could have a total fluoride intake at or above the level of those living in a community with a water fluoride level of 1.5 milligrams per liter or higher. Because we have individual differences in how much water we consume and how many foods and beverages that are made from the drinking water we consume. And so it's really difficult to go just by the water fluoride concentration when there's individual differences in our fluoride consumption patterns. And the National Toxicology Program, they also published a meta-analysis that was associated with their systematic review. When they looked at urinary fluoride concentrations, which would better approximate our individual differences in fluoride consumption patterns and fluoride intake from all sources, they found that urinary fluoride concentrations below 1.5 milligrams per liter are consistently associated with lower IQ in children. And this was the case when considering all studies or only the high-quality ones. They also said that the findings show that a dose-response relationship between higher fluoride exposure and lower child IQ exists, meaning that as fluoride increases, child IQ decreases. The NTP report highlighted a need for more US-based studies on fluoride and neurodevelopment, and I led the first one that was published last May in the journal JAMA Network Open. We found that higher prenatal fluoride exposure is associated with more neurobehavioral problems among 3-year-old children in Los Angeles, California. So these neurobehavioral problems include things like anxiety, temper tantrums, symptoms of autism, and headaches and stomach aches of no known medical origin. In particular, we found that pregnant women whose urinary fluoride levels were approximately 1.2 milligrams per liter, so again, that being less than 1.5, that they had children with nearly double the odds of exhibiting clinically relevant neurobehavioral problems by age 3 when compared with pregnant women whose urine fluoride levels were approximately 0.5 milligrams per liter. There are several mechanisms by which fluoride can exert neurotoxicity on the developing brain. It can readily cross the placenta and accumulate in brain regions implicated in our learning, memory, mood, attention, and executive function. And we've seen this both at high fluoride exposure levels and quite low levels of fluoride. Fluoride neurochemically has been shown to alter cholinergic activity, which is a neurotransmitter that's important for our attention, learning, and memory. It's also been shown to alter glutamate metabolism, which may play a role in the development of anxiety disorders. It's been shown to contribute to mitochondrial dysfunction and increase oxidative stress in our cells, both of which can contribute to cellular damage and cellular death. I can explain more what that means if you have questions on that. And so the human studies I described, in those we're examining associations between fluoride exposure and neurodevelopment. But as epidemiologists, there are certain criteria that we look to see if associations might be causal. So might fluoride exposure be causing brain damage to children? And in the case of the literature on fluoride exposure and neurodevelopment, most of those criteria are satisfied. So we observe strong magnitudes of association that are consistent across multiple studies. As I said, 64 out of 72 studies. The exposure is being assessed before the outcome. So we assess fluoride exposure during prenatal development or infant development and neurodevelopment in childhood. There's clear biological plausibility for these associations, as I mentioned, particularly from the animal studies. A dose-response relationship exists. There's coherence across the different facets of the literature. We have experimental evidence from animal studies, but it wouldn't be ethical now to conduct a randomized control study in humans where we assign pregnant women to different levels of fluoride, given what we now know about the potential impacts on the developing brain. As you may already be aware, last fall, a federal judge made a ruling in a fluoride trial against the EPA. The ruling stated the court finds that fluoridation of water at 0.7 milligrams per liter, which is the level presently considered optimal in the United States, poses an unreasonable risk of reduced IQ in children, and the scientific literature in the record provides a high level of certainty that a hazard is present. Fluoride is associated with reduced IQ. And what this ruling implies is that there isn't enough of a margin of safety between the hazard level, which the NTP report identified to exist at 1.5 milligrams per liter, and the exposure level of 0.7 milligrams per liter, which is what's added to drinking water for dental cavity prevention. And so the EPA has a default standard for there to be at least a factor of 10 between a hazard and exposure level of a chemical. And so if we apply that default standard to community fluoridation, the fluoride concentration in drinking water would need to be 0.15 milligrams per liter or lower to provide enough of a margin of safety to protect child IQ. Although we've seen in several studies now that the hazard to child IQ or child brain development in general may exist at a level lower than 1.5 milligrams per liter. In that case, there would be no safe level of fluoride for the developing brain.
Professor, we do have a long agenda today. It looks like you're at the end.
I'm done.
so
Yes,
just, yeah,
thank you so much
make
for
sure
your
you get to the-
time.
Okay, thank you for coming today. Any questions from the council? All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Mowat, I think you're next on the agenda.
Good afternoon. My name is Dan Mullett, and I'm going to be speaking on behalf of the continuation of fluoridation for the city of Clearwater. First of all, thank you. Here, a second. Thank you, Mayor Rector, council members, our city manager, and our city attorney. Certainly for your invitation for us to be able to speak. But mostly, I want to thank you for your desire to make the best decision that you can for the health of our city. Like some of you, Clearwater is my home. I have been here ever since I grew up. We raised our 3 sons here. We are raising our 2 granddaughters here. My wife and I had a dental practice in Clearwater where we served thousands of patients in this community for over 35 years. This place is our home. Based on the emails and conversations, and with Dr. Mallon's talking about fluoridation, the fluoridation process, this council seems to have a pretty clear understanding of what the basics of fluoridation are, so I will forego that part unless you have any questions. It appears also that there is a feeling that exists in this body that there's a need for more studies, or at least the right study, to give you exactly what you need to make good decisions for Clearwater regarding the future of fluoridation. Well, as a dentist and scientist, I certainly appreciate the need for good clinical evidence, and I will provide some scientific insights today. Dr. Johnny Johnson, who asked me to speak this afternoon, he is the renowned expert for fluoridation of water systems, pretty much around the nation. Currently, he's speaking at the Miami-Dade Council Commission, and is unable to be here, but he is truly the expert when it comes to studies, and has already sent some to you all, I believe, and we'll follow up with some more articles and research papers to support the safety and efficacy of fluoridation. Dr. Johnson will give you all the science you need. My role here today, I feel, is to give you the confidence to know that you're doing the right thing when you vote for fluoridation in the future. So let's address the real topic that brought us together this afternoon: the weight of making the right decision. Remember the last time our world collided with that weight? It was 5 years ago this month. COVID, right? Remember how everyone had an opinion of what to do and what not to do? Everyone was an expert, from the United States Chief Medical Officer down, all the way down to your next door neighbor. Not to mention the internet and Facebook. The amount of information and misinformation was paralyzing. Now, I don't know how you made your decision to protect yourself and your family, but I asked myself, who is the most credible, unbiased medical source that I know on this topic of COVID? Well, after weighing all of them, I chose Johns Hopkins as my source for high-quality information. Above all the others, they turned out to be exactly right. So, with this fluoridation issue in mind, I'm going to use the same thought process. What is the best, most unbiased long-term source of data regarding fluoride and the alleged threats of diminished IQ, ADHD, neurotoxicity, and the issues with pregnant mothers? First of all, can we agree that fluoride is a naturally occurring mineral all over the world that leaches in varying amounts into the water systems? You good with that? Right. Water sources have had varying amounts of fluoride in their water, or in water, for eons. And people have been drinking that water for centuries. In fact, that's how the scientists found out the benefits of fluoride in teeth. In 1901, there was a dentist in Colorado Springs that recognized the fact that his community didn't have any tooth decay. And the surrounding communities had a lot more dental decay. And then they finally figured out that it was a result of fluoride in the water. Eventually, scientists found that there was a sweet spot in the amount of fluoride concentration in water, 0.7 parts per million, like Dr. Mallon talked about. Under that amount, under 0.7 parts per million, and basically fluoride is ineffective. Over that amount, in the 2 to 4 parts per million range, and teeth will be stronger. But yes, sometimes you can have some surface discoloration with that higher fluoride concentration. Way over that amount, 5 to 10 parts per million and above, and you can actually have structural damage to teeth and bones. Yes. Now, Clearwater pumps water from wells that have trace amounts of natural fluoride in the water that is below that optimal level, that effective level for making teeth stronger. Our discussion here today is about simply maintaining the amount of fluoride that we add to achieve the optimal levels of fluoridation at 0.7 parts per million. Other cities have had naturally higher levels of fluoride. Jacksonville, Florida, for example, has naturally occurring fluoride levels around 1.0 parts per million, slightly higher than optimal. Communities in the southwestern United States, states like Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, they have moderately high levels of fluoride in their well water, approximately 2 to 4 parts per million or higher. And internationally, for example, in China and India, they have significantly high levels of fluoride in their water, 5 to 10 parts per million and more. If these areas have had for centuries fluoride levels above that recommended 0.7 parts per million, it would stand to reason that you would see these populations with higher rates of lowered IQ, ADHD, and other purported symptoms which today's studies elude, but you don't. Some studies, depending on how they are designed and interpreted, can tell us a lot or not. I believe common sense tells us that we would have heard if there was an IQ deficiency in Jacksonville, Florida, or an increased population of people with ADHD in Arizona, but we don't. If you're looking for the best, unbiased, long-term source of data on fluoride and any side effects, simply look at all the communities in our state, country, and world with decades or centuries of fluoridated water and study their populations. There will be no statistical difference between them and comparable communities without fluoride. Thinking about Johns Hopkins and their stance on fluoride, Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health supports community water fluoridation as a crucial public health measure for preventing tooth decay and promoting oral health, citing its effectiveness and equity in disease prevention. And regarding the current debates, Johns Hopkins recognizes that there have been recent questions about whether U.S. fluoridation policies should change, but maintains its support for the current approach. So do other leading medical and health organizations around the world. Not a single credible medical or health organization in the world opposes fluoride. The list is long, but if we looked only at 2 organizations regarding concerns over fluoride and any IQ questions, that would be the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology and the American Academy of Pediatrics, the 2 organizations that we trust to take care of our pregnant mothers, developing fetuses, and our babies. They continue to support fluoridation as well as recommending that pregnant mothers ingest it for good dental health, as well as recommending that infants and children drink fluoridated water. Studies opposing fluoride that are devoid of bias, sadly, are rare. In 2024, Dr. Mallon referenced the National Toxicology Program, NTP. They compiled numerous studies that assess the effects of IQ and fluoride. And I'm thinking, oh, this will be great. We're going to have tons of studies that we can look at all in the same place. But like she said, they compiled 72 studies, but only found 19 that were quality studies. That's amazing. The findings in those studies did show only moderate confidence that there was an association with fluoride and IQ levels above 1.5 parts per million. Now, what did we say the optimal range was? 0.7? To quote directly from the NTP report on page 3, and this is in bold print, this monograph and addendum do not address whether the sole exposure to fluoride added to drinking water is associated with a measurable effect on IQ. If there was an association, don't you think they would have made that point? There are outstanding high-quality studies available from around the world that have been conducted, and those studies show no association between water fluoridation and IQ or ADHD. Now, our last illustration, thought this was interesting. Now, regardless of politics, the country Israel has been a country who has always had a deep-seated desire to take care of the health of their people, and sometimes regardless of what other people think. I wondered what they said about fluoride. So I looked it up, and we're going to wrap up my time with this interesting finding. In 1981, after seeing the success of community water fluoridation in the United States and in other countries, Israel decided to fluoridate their water nationally. Interestingly, Israel has a relatively few number of sources, so it makes it even easier to be able to fluoridate the entire country the way they do. So they began their fluoridation in 1981. 20 years later, in 2001, after seeing the success of this national project, Israel's People's Health Regulation Report was updated to state that fluoridation should be mandatory for all Israeli communities over 5,000 people. But in August of 2014, 33 years after this success of fluoridation, curiously, the regulations were changed and fluoridation was discontinued in Israel. Interestingly, in an Israel Dental Health Division report, I found this entry. In a discussion held in the Ministry of Health in June 2015, that was 10 months after the discontinuation back in August of 2014. In June of 2015, it was decided that fluoridation of drinking water should be reintroduced. And it was approved in the Knesset in March of 2016 to restart fluoridation. Sadly, due to other significant national issues like COVID, Gaza, and other things, they have not reintroduced fluoridation in Israel yet. This is sad. It's sad for two reasons. One, clinically, and in 2024, an amazing report came out to study exactly this. I found a research article that dramatically shows the cost of this decision, has had on the people of Israel. After comparing the number of crowns and fillings of all types before and after the cessation of fluoridation, the study shows a dramatic increase in the number of all dental treatments for all ages. So in real numbers, 2014, when fluoridation was stopped, the number of restorations that year in this sample group that they measured was 7,600 restorations that they did. In 2019, they took a sample population, same type of sample population, and 5 years after they stopped fluoride, the number of restorations that were done in that population, 20,000. Again, in 2014, when they stopped fluoridation, 7,600 fillings. In 2019, 5 years later, 20,000 fillings were done. The second reason this is sad, and it's sad because it's political. I began to think about what caused the change in policy that resulted in all that unnecessary expense and pain. August 2014, the Ministry of Health decides to shelve a very successful 33-year-old fluoridation program. In June of 2015, the Ministry of Health decides to reinstitute national water fluoridation in Israel. So how did that happen? In 10 months, you could not see enough of a clinical change for that Ministry of Health to say, oh, man, we made a mistake. We need to change this back. You wouldn't see those clinical results in 2014 like that. In 10 months, there was also no scientific breakthrough that would have wanted to make them change their minds. I believe that the only thing that changed in 10 months were the people on the committee. There were members on the Ministry of Health in 2014 who were swayed by uninformed public opinion or questionable questionably interpreted scientific studies, who were then replaced by new ministers in 2015 who were willing to stand confidently with the desire to do what's right for the people. And I will close with this last paragraph from this 2014 Israeli Journal of Health Policy Research report. And I'll read this real quick. Exposure to fluoride is important both before and after tooth eruption, which emphasize the need for restoring water fluoridation in Israel to help prevent the occurrence of dental caries and reduce severity. We recommend that fluoridation should occur in all communities and be nationwide, adjusting the concentrations to the existing natural amounts of fluoride in the water, which are different in each area of the country, just like here. As mentioned in the introduction, although water fluoridation was supposed to be reintroduced, it did not happen yet due to budgetary issues. However, according to the Ministry of Health, water fluoridation is a cost-effective method and estimated at 5 shekels per resident per year, a very low cost. Also, it saves dental care costs by reducing the need for it. Because of the benefits of water fluoridation for dental health, as demonstrated in this article and many other articles, and due to the cost effectiveness, we hope that this paper will help the decision makers take this important matter into account and to reintroduce fluoridation as planned, investing in prevention and not only in dental care. Council members, with all the significant issues that come before you day in and day out, month in and month out, I do not envy your position. But I hope that our time together will help you stand confidently with the centuries of evidence, along with the science and other quality organizations supporting you, to support your decision for maintaining our water fluoridation. I pray for your wisdom and discernment as you steward this community now and in the years to come. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Mullet? Councilmember Menino?
Thank you for your prayers.
Yes, sir.
Much appreciated. I know everybody on the dais will always welcome those.
Thank you.
My question is, in a discussion like this with two obviously very educated sides, and it's, you know, you could hear one argument and say, wow, 100% correct, and then you hear the other and you're like, boy, I believe them too. How do you, or is there a national level to identify low bias and high quality studies? How?
That's going to be a Dr. Johnson question. Honestly, I appreciate the studies, but I have not studied and memorized like he has. But what I can tell you is that looking at the city of Jacksonville, who's had fluoride a lot longer than Clearwater has, do you see any clinical differences, any significant differences at all in the populations that are there? More so in other places that have even higher levels of fluoridation, naturally, because you wouldn't, all the artificial, all the fluoride that would be maintained in a city system would be that 0.7 parts per million, ideally. And so theoretically, you would be able to see statistical differences in those areas of IQ, in those areas of ADHD, in other issues with developing babies and so forth.
I have so many questions. I could go on all day with this whole group, but that's not the.
Very good.
Thank you.
I appreciate your.
Anybody else? If not, well, thank you, Dr. Mullet. Thank you, Surgeon General. Thank you, Dr. Mallon, for coming and sharing with us today. We've learned a lot from both of you, all of you, and appreciate you traveling in to Clearwater to join us today on this issue. Thank you.
I do have some comments. I don't have questions, but I still have
we're
something.
going to come back to it.
Okay, back in time, we're just getting to the presentation? Awesome, very good. We'll
Although
put it then.
I feel like after all that, we should take a break so everybody should brush their teeth. But I don't know. I feel like I should brush my teeth after all this talking about dental care.
Bottled water?
But I think we'll come back to that later on.
Okay, very good.
So with that, we'll move to item 3.1 on the agenda.
Authorize a guaranteed maximum price proposal to Coors Construction, Inc. of Pinellas Park for upgrades to an aging electrical system, aesthetic improvements, and lighting of the pool equipment at Ross Norton.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. Matthew Anderson, Assistant Director, Parks and Recreation. The GMP before you is to upgrade the electrical system at Ross Norton. We recently put in a new propane pool heater to offset people that swam at the Long Center. This electrical upgrade will not only benefit that new heater, but it'll also benefit the pool and the restrooms overall. The system is currently in a chemically caustic environment where you've got chlorine and other pool chemicals that get on the unit, the panels and all, and have been rusting them. So we're going to be moving those panels out of that caustic environment. It's also going to allow for true three-phase power. Currently, we've got an open delta power system, which is not true three-phase, which this pool will operate better on. We worked with Duke Energy to upgrade the power to the rec center. Once we get this electrical upgrades done, Duke will be able to hook up the true three-phase to this new electrical system. We've also got improvements to the utility staging area outside of the building that'll be done through this. And I'll be willing to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, questions from the council? Vice Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I haven't swam over there in a while, but is that a salt system in that pool or still chlorinated?
Still chlorine.
Have you considered putting a salt system in there?
I would have to defer to the athletic side of the house, Mike Lockwood and them. As far as the construction is the part that falls under me, but not the long-term maintenance of the facility. I can get you that answer though, not today, but I'll bring it back to you.
Yeah, I'd like to at least look into that.
Okay.
I know a lot of pools around the area can go into that. I mean, it does make chlorine and ACL and it separates it, but the water is just such a it's such a better water to be in for your skin and everything else.
Absolutely. We'll look into it and I can bring that back to you.
Okay.
Okay. Other questions from council? Do we have consent on 3.1?
Yes.
We have consent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item 4.1.
Approve an event license agreement between Jones Lang LaSalle Americas in its capacity as the agent for the Countryside Mall and the Clearwater Police Department.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. Michael Wallach, Deputy Chief for the Clearwater Police Department. The item before you is a request for approval reference an event license agreement between Jones Lang LaSalle Americas, Inc. and the Clearwater Police Department, authorizing the use of the Countryside Mall parking lot near Whole Foods to host a shred-a-thon and medicine take-back on Saturday, April 26, 2025, from 9 till 2. It's a great opportunity for Clearwater residents to dispose of papers with sensitive information and unwanted or expired prescription medications at no cost. And just as a highlight, last year we collected at April of 2024, 726 pounds of unwanted prescriptions and 22,000 pounds of documents. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions from the council? I've attended. It's a huge amount. No questions asked on dropping off the medicine, so, but the amount is just incredible that's collected. So thank you for continuing that important program. So do we have consent on 5.1?
Yep.
Excuse me, 4.1.
Yes.
We have consent.
Yep.
Thank you. Agenda item 5.1.
Approve a purchase order to Tampa Bay Marine, Inc. for Seminole Boat Ramp repairs.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. Mike McDonald, Marine and Aviation Director. Staff is looking for approval for Tampa Bay Marine to make repairs to the above water portion of the boat ramps and concrete piers at Seminole Boat Ramp. They will also be replacing the gangways and the floating docks. This project will be done in 2 phases, and the boat ramps will be open throughout construction. We are currently under design for the underwater portion of the ramps, and those repairs will be brought back to council at a later date. I will be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the council? Councilmember Teixeira?
So, am I correct that these docks were built on March 2019? Or the last time they were built were 2019?
No, ma'am.
No?
No, we might have done some repair work to them. Probably about that time is when we did the fixed docks that are
Okay.
out to the side. We did those in-house.
Okay.
But these are for the concrete piers and the ramps themselves.
Okay. And then, so is this considered wear and tear, or did the hurricane play a role in the damage?
These are just wear and tear. They're
Okay.
old. It's an old docking system, old ramp, and they need to be refurbished, yeah.
Other questions? Vice Mayor?
Okay, I went over there this weekend just to take a look at it. That far west dock is completely, gone. So you got to do the repairs with the concrete first, and then, do we have that dock that we're going to put back?
Well, we're buying new, so what we did is we took that one out of service. So what you have on those concrete piers is you had the gangway that went down to the floating portion. Well, those anchors that anchored that gangway on there were completely exposed, so that gangway was getting ready to collapse. So we took that out of service, and just to keep people off of that, we removed those ourselves. Just so, boats wouldn't be coming in and parked there. It's closed on, the land side, but on the water side, there's nothing really you can do out there except put, this is out of service. So we just removed the gangway and the floating dock just to prevent people from trying to utilize that from the water
Okay.
side.
What about, this is different, but kind of the same, the end of Drew Street, where that dock is still
Yeah.
like sitting in the water? Are we waiting for an insurance claim on that, or what are we doing
No,
there?
it's going out to bid. We had the damage assessment done, and we have the engineer's report for all the damage on that, and that's gonna be captured in the bid. So we're gonna send that out to bid and wait for a repair on that.
All right, I have people asking me all the time about
Yeah, we
that.
have a lot of those tension cables on that dock. They're destroyed, so we have to replace all the tension cables on that docking system. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done to that dock, and that's part of it.
Thanks for asking that. I had the same question Saturday.
Yeah.
I noticed it Saturday morning, so thank you. Yeah. Okay, any other questions? If not, do we have consent on agenda item?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have consent on agenda item 5.2.
Declare a surplus and approve the sale of City of Clearwater improved South Garden Avenue right-of-way to the Church of Scientology.
Good afternoon, Council. Tom Mahoney, Public Works. This item is to declare the vacated portion of Garden Street surplus and also for sale. The purchase price is $1.375 million, and with conditions laid out in that contract. The city will keep all the necessary easements to cover their currently owned utilities, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from council? Councilman Teixeira?
Just comments and maybe questions after that. So it is my understanding that we all had the opportunity to meet Mr. Miscavige last week, and I was very happy to take that opportunity. And I met with Mr. Miscavige as well as our city manager. And it was a good opportunity for me to reiterate my thoughts and my feelings on the matter. But I think it would be an accurate depiction if I would say it was a robust and candid conversation. And it was different from the first one because I did most of the listening at the first meeting, and this one, it was a great opportunity for me to express my thoughts. I did reiterate what I said on March 17th about how I felt the 1.3 wasn't going to move the needle. I talked about activation, open access, and I actually did see renderings of the entertainment center that I was talking about, the bowling alley, the amusement, as well as the movie theater. And again, I asked, this is beautiful, can we have it in writing and activation? And of course, he refused. So I left the meeting feeling very conflicted. On the one hand, I felt that I wasn't successful in negotiating what I thought would be a good deal for our city, which is open access and activation. But on the other hand, I also felt good that I was given the opportunity to have a really candid conversation about what I felt would be a good partnership. So I guess he counts the votes, so I didn't expect to have a change of heart on his side, but I guess what's left is just some questions, and so I want to reserve some minutes so I can speak, or I can have the PSCA come forward to answer some of my questions. I'm not sure if you want me to do that now or later, or how you want to
Oh,
move forward.
Yeah, at either point.
Can I have the
We're
PSTA?
going to discuss it again later, too, so, I mean, it's, but.
They've been
yeah,
waiting for
that's
such
fine.
a long
Yeah,
time.
that's fine, yeah, that's fine.
Darden? Thank you. So one of the concerns that, or unanswered questions that I had was the impact that it would take on our new intermobile center, which is 2 blocks east of it. And we've had several conversations, or I have, with various members of the PSTA, and we discuss it back and forth. And so my question is, how would you categorize the impact of the privatization of this road to your new intermobile center?
First of all, thank you for having us here. My name's Darden Rice. I'm the Chief Planning and Community Affairs Officer at PSTA. This is Devin Deal, my colleague, who is our Planning and Data Analyst Manager at PSTA. And we've enjoyed a really long time, productive relationship with the City of Clearwater. We're really happy to be running the Clearwater Beach Ferry with great success, and also running a new service, on-demand service from the St. Pete Clearwater Airport to Clearwater Beach. Regarding the proposed vacation of Garden Avenue, several of my colleagues a few months ago committed to the city that working around that closure is something that we could do. However, it does, when you go back and look at the traffic study, it really does mean that the proposal to look down the road to have traffic signalization at the intersection of Franklin and Myrtle would be a very important thing to do, especially as we start to perhaps reduce some of that downtown urban connectivity. It's not just beneficial for PSTA, but probably for everyone as you bring in more density, more businesses, a hotel, the new Clearwater City Hall, and much less the new PSTA station, that having that signal there and applying for that signal from FDOT would be probably a really smart thing to do. I'm not saying we have to hold anything up until it gets built first, but at some point, getting that ball rolling would be really important to do.
And this signal is one of PSTA's way of, I guess, compensating for that lack of that street, right? So my next question is, who would be absorbing that cost of that signalization?
That I'm not sure of offhand. I believe the city of Clearwater would be the applicant, and PSTA would probably be some type of sub-applicant. We have had some initial talks with FDOT, and they're aware of a potential application looking at that intersection. I'm not sure what their process is for coming back and asking the city for partial payment on that.
So it would fall at least in some part back to the city to.
That would be my educated guess, yes.
Do we know how much that would be?
I wish.
Does anybody?
I don't, I'm sorry. I can find out and get back to you, but I don't have that off the top of my head. That would really be a question for FDOT, I believe.
Vice Mayor was next. and
Yep.
Councilman.
Okay. So I just want to clear something up. We've already asked FDOT for a light at Franklin. They declined it because it's so close to court. So the intersection you're talking about is Pierce.
Yes.
Is putting the light there, which is right next to City Hall.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been advocating for a light there because we're putting a new City Hall there and we need a pedestrian crossing.
Yeah.
Coming across Myrtle. That would be the perfect place to put it. Plus it'd be beneficial for the buses. They could come out of Franklin, go down east, turn on Pierce, and then they can turn there at the light. You know, I've been talking for probably 6-8 months with PSTA about this, and that seemed to be a pretty, one of the best ways to do, even before we were talking about doing anything with Garden, that was one of the best ways to really go south on Myrtle from from the bus intermodal center.
Correct.
So I just wanted to clear that up. It was
Yeah,
Pierce.
I apologize if I misspoke. We did look at a potential signalization at Franklin and Myrtle, but did decide that Pierce and Myrtle would be the best bet.
Yeah, thanks.
Councilmember Cotton?
I mean, that may have just answered my question. The original question I had was going to be for you, just plainly speaking, that the closure of South Garden Avenue would directly affect the intermodal system, creating the need for a light at Franklin and Myrtle.
Okay, not wholly, no.
Okay.
It's just one of, it would, we can reroute 2 or 3 proposed routes to avoid Garden. We can absorb that. We can do that. That is not the singular factor leading to the need for a signalized intersection, but it's the cumulative impact.
So you guys, in your plan, were going to use South Garden to access?
Well, actually,
3
in the
blocks
traffic study, there were 2 different scenarios, and there was another scenario where we don't have to use South Garden.
Understood, okay. But
But it
if
does
you-
put a little bit more, we would need to be able to have that ability to turn onto Myrtle at a signalized intersection, north and southbound.
Right, which now we've cleared up that Pierce Street getting a signal will allow for that northbound route.
Correct.
Okay. So really, the Franklin Myrtle signal has been fixed by the Pierce Myrtle signal. Essentially, if it gets put in.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you. Just wanted to make sure everything was lining up.
We're talking about east-west, how about north, how about Court? How does that affect Court? So, okay, sorry.
Good afternoon. Devin Deal, Planning and Data Analyst Manager. With the closure of South Garden, there would be, in one plan, we have 9 buses an hour traveling on South Garden. With the closure, those would instead just travel north on Myrtle and then turn on to Franklin to access the transit center.
Councilmember Menino?
No, my question was basically
Well,
answered with that. We were talking
I-
about North Garden, and we all of a sudden started talking about
Well, wait.
absorbing costs for lights and.
Well, I want everybody else to weigh in first, but first of all, we work together and we're trying to figure this out in discussion. But what was said at the council meeting the other night was not accurate. This is a street that gets used every day.
Thank you.
I drove through it this morning. I drive through it every day. I know a number of people, some of us on this dais, drive through this street every day.
Thank you.
And public transportation. I've seen flag buses coming across that part, right? In addition to use, the parking spots on there that we collect revenue for, it's not a huge amount of revenue. Why? Because there are not a lot of parking spots along there. But I can tell you that they are often full, completely full, particularly when there's an event at the flag building. So that's just not accurate that this is not a street that's already used. It's used a lot. And the reason it's not used more has to do with the status of the success of our downtown area. I use a lot because I have a reason to come down and use it. But I can tell you that if we had a more robust downtown with the public coming down to events, particularly to access Cleveland Street, we would have more traffic on this street. And so I don't know that we did any study on what the impact would be on future traffic if we are able to develop a more robust downtown Clearwater of closing this street. But I can tell you, it's used. It's used frequently by a number of folks who live or work downtown every day. And I think our goal would be eventually to have more success downtown and more robust and have more arteries open. So I appreciate you sharing that because that's something that I don't think was clear the other night, but that street's used quite a bit. And I think we should be careful in thinking short-term and not thinking long-term about what closing that street could mean to access to all the downtown, which we want to make grow and prosper. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, and thank you, Councilmember, Vice Mayor Albritton, who's on our board of directors, and thank you for your service to PSTA.
Questions?
Okay. Any other questions, any other discussion?
I don't necessarily have any questions. I think this will probably come on, we'll revisit this on Thursday and we'll have a deeper dive in it.
And it's on
And
the
it-
agenda later on too, if somebody else has something they want to add after thinking about it. But again, we're not, everybody, one point I want to make is the way we talked about it the other night. All five of us have different perspectives, and we all respect the fact that five of us feel differently about this deal. I will say one thing that Councilman Teixeira said is it's challenging for us to negotiate the best result for the citizens when it's really five different negotiations going on with not just them, but any other party. It's really challenging to get the best result. And I thanked the staff for doing what they've done to get us to this point, because it's extremely hard work for our staff or city manager to try to put together something to come for us for a vote when she's really trying to represent five different opinions on what should be in, what shouldn't be in on that. And they've worked really hard to do that, to get it where it's at now. But it's not the best way to negotiate. I think we all recognize that. So.
Can I finish?
Yeah.
I thought I was in the middle, but thank you. We will revisit this on Thursday and have a deeper discussion. I think it's important to identify that in the negotiations, our city manager, this whole dais was a yes, but, and what came after the but was our disagreements. And some needed higher level of assurances, more levels of insurances, more activation or in writing, but we're not as far apart as some of us are pretending to be, or the public thinks we were. We were all, and please correct me if I'm wrong, city manager, this council was all yes, but, and where we differed was the but.
That's not true.
May I finish again? This is the second time that I've tried to finish, but she can correct me if I'm.
But she's not allowed to talk about the conversation she had with five of us outside the sunshine. So.
We were all, I'll let you continue your discussion and you can, go ahead. Mayor, I'm giving the floor back to you because I've tried two different times and you've jumped in, so I'm going to let you.
She can't talk about what any of us said individually outside the sunshine.
Are we in the sunshine currently?
I was going to say, I believe I can at the dais.
Well, she can't talk about conversations she's had outside, which she's had prior to this.
I don't think that's true, sir.
I do believe the manager could, if that's of interest. I do not think I would be able to, given my individual privilege with each of you, but the manager, not being subject to Florida bar rules, I believe potentially could. I don't think it would violate the sunshine law at this moment, given that we are in the sunshine at this moment. So if that's of interest to the council, then I do believe that would be permissible. I would not personally, again, because I'm subject to the Florida bar, but with the manager being in a different position, I do believe it would be permissible under Florida law for her to do so.
I think this is a perfect example and a prime example of why this isn't only such a tough discussion to have, is because the fear and the willingness to not speak about these issues in front of the public is probably what got us here the last 40 or 50 years. And the very having these discussions, whether we agree or disagree, respectfully having these discussions is probably in the best interest of every one of the citizens out there, whether they agree with the decision or not. And I commend this council again on working hard. We're always going to do the hard work. I commend us on finding ways to do the smart work, but I also challenge us to find ways to do the uncomfortable work. And this is not easy. It would have been solved 40 or 50 years ago, but I just appreciate that we have open, honest dialogue that's fair and respectful and brings the public along, because they are deserving of that.
Well, to say that we all agree, that's not true. What, we agreed to consider it. I think all five of us agreed to consider it. That would be accurate. But we had different things that, I don't know. I mean, it's city manager, but we had different things that were important to at least two of us, maybe all five of us, I don't know. But that doesn't mean we agreed to it. That means we were willing to consider it.
I mean, the way I perceived it was, are you willing to negotiate and have a conversation? Yes, that's the yes part.
But
Let's have that, so it wasn't like, are you willing to sell this? It was like, do I have consent, how do you feel about city manager starting conversation with the Church of Scientology? And I said, yes, absolutely. Talking is good, but it wasn't a yes to anything particular. It was, yes, let's talk. Let's see what they want. Let's see what we can have in return, and hopefully both parties can agree. But I didn't specifically agree to anything except just initiate conversations.
I'm sorry, but I do agree with Councilmember Menino here. I think that when we said yes, it was specifically to South Garden, and let's see what the city attorney, city manager, city staff can work together to bring to us. And then the but were each additional council member, whichever you guys had, to add to that. But the way that I remember it, a few months ago when we started this process of the church reaching out to staff, is yes, we were all go and talk. As a matter of fact, I think they were asking for more properties, and we said no, and we went to say, we'll deal with this and see how things go. Sorry, I know you keep getting interrupted, so I'll stop there.
Mayor, would you like me to? I'm happy to answer these questions. Okay. So about the process. So how it initiated was, yes, reached out to each of you individually and asked if this was something that the council would be interested in having the city begin negotiations. And it was a unanimous yes to go and have those conversations. Once we got started into that and got some more specifics about what the Church of Scientology was looking at, brought that back to each of you, again, individually, and asked for what would be important to each of you and if this type of a deal was going to be successful. And so all five of you participated in that process in terms of giving me, as the negotiator, items to negotiate for in exchange for giving them Garden Avenue. And so then we went through that. And as going through that, we shaped what that would look like, brought all five of the options to the Church of Scientology to see, to negotiate that. What you have in front of you today is a result of those negotiations, which did not include everything because the Church of Scientology said there were certain conditions that they were not interested at that time in exchanging the Garden Avenue for. But it was my understanding that should we have what all five of you individually asked for, then that would be a possibility of a positive vote. So, to clarify, I think what Councilmember Menino is saying is that there were options provided that if that was a successful negotiation individually for what you wanted, that then there would be a positive affirmative vote. I hope that answers the question.
It's true.
We all interrupted.
We were all open to it. That's true.
That's exactly what I said. I didn't say you agreed to contractual terms. I just said we were all a yes, please no negotiate, and here's the level of assurances that the warm fuzzies on the other end that made each of us comfortable at a different level. Coming back, these are the terms that in a negotiation played out from both sides. Not all of our assurances and warm fuzzies were met, and that's why we're where we are with some discrepancies and disagreement. But in the beginning of it, it was a yes, please negotiate, and this is where we are. So that was the only comment I made. But again, I'm glad that we're finally having these conversations on the dais in the public and bringing the public along. This is healthy for our city.
And if I may, just one other point in this. And so as is with any negotiations, how I get the authority from the council individually is in terms of like a range, right? And so in this case, what was asked of council is, at what point would you say no, for the vote? And so that I could frame a good set of arrangements and what would be acceptable to the council as a body, which, as you mentioned, Mayor, is hard to do with five individuals who have very different ideas. So just in terms of how that got structured, that's how we did that, was through the authority of talking to each of you individually.
And so the public understands too. That's what I was trying to explain earlier. the challenging part, she can relate to us generally how others feel about it, but she can't tell me what any one of the individuals here have said directly. That's part of our law in Florida. So, which makes it even more difficult for her to put together a plan, a project here. But I just want to make clear, all along, and I said this the other night, you know, if the deal terms I felt like were favorable overall to the citizens of Clearwater, I would support it if we could have gotten a deal. The deal terms in this are not what I think make it valuable enough to the citizens to approve it. So we all have 5 different perspectives on it, and we'll respect those 5 different perspectives, and we'll vote on it here Thursday night. But for me, there had to be terms in this that were not, because I wanted terms in that would somewhat different from Councilmember Teixeira, but terms that would help make sure that we are making sure the way this property is developed benefits the city as a whole and the future development and growth of downtown Clearwater. Okay? Have we beat this one to death?
Round 2.
Okay.
If I may, I just want to recognize, so Mr. Mahoney here is retiring.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
After 33 years and 11 months. And so just wanted to take a quick moment to thank him for all of his contributions and his decades of
Couldn't put another
service.
month in to make it even 34?
Can't do it.
Okay. With that, we'll move to agenda item, excuse me, where are we? I guess we're on 5.3.
Approve underground conversions agreement and utility relocation agreement with Duke Energy of Florida.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Mayor and Council, Tara Kivett, Public Works Engineering. The underground conversion and utility relocation agreements supports the city's need to underground utilities adjacent to City Hall project. CRA trustees earlier today approved CRA to fund the cost of this work. The Duke cost is the cost to Duke is $671,431.56. The city's share is 75% of that for the 3 blocks, as we touched on earlier, for an amount of $503,000. CRA is setting aside $1 million, and that will help cover some of the costs for restoration and for the joint users. The city and PSTA will continue to coordinate with Duke and the private communication companies known as joint users on the final design, the approach to construction, and the easements that will be required. Any questions?
Any questions from the council? Okay. If not, do we have, well, we're missing one to have consent on here. So. She's coming back here or not?
She can pull it off consent if she is.
We'll come back to it, okay. Thank you. Yeah. We have consent among the 4 who are still here?
Yes, sir.
So,
Yep.
we have consent. Agenda item 6.1.
Authorize an increase of purchase order with multiple vendors for the maintenance and repair of city vehicles.
Mayor, Council, Dan Mayer, Interim General Services Director. We're asking for an increase on this multi-vendor contract for maintenance of our vehicles, primarily due to a lot of repairs we incurred post-hurricane. We had some damage that was repairable, but we also put a lot of our vehicles through a lot of strenuous efforts in the weeks immediately after the hurricane, and that took some additional time and expenses. This should get us through the end of this fiscal year, and then we will bump the total dollar amount for the next 2 years with some likely impacts due to tariffs.
Any questions from the council? Do we have consent on 6.1?
Yes.
We have consent on agenda item 6.1. 6.2.
Authorize a purchase order to Communications International of Vero Beach for the purchase of new additional or replacement 2-way radios.
Mayor, Council, Dan Mayer. This is for purchase of handsets for our radio system and our users, both in vehicle and personal mobile radios. These devices will be compatible with the new Motorola system, what we hope to migrate to at the end of the year. So with your approval, we would like to make this investment.
Okay. Any questions on 6.2? If there are none, do we have consent?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, we have consent on 6.2. Councilmember Teixeira, we
Did I
have
miss?
consent on 5.3 and 6.1, if you do not object.
No, I do not. I reviewed it. I'm okay with that.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 7.1.
Authorize the purchase order 10-8 fire equipment for the purchase of new Pierce velocity pumpers.
Wow.
Good afternoon, everyone. Marvin Pettengill, Interim Fire Chief, Clearwater Fire Rescue. This afternoon, we are requesting authorization to purchase 2 new Pierce velocity pumpers and 1 Pierce tractor-drawn aerial in the amount of $4,378,595.86. These 3 new pieces of apparatus will allow us to remove 3 frontline units into reserves and 3 current reserve units to surplus. Excuse me. The City of Clearwater will be reimbursed for a portion of this purchase by the county, approximately 11.67%, due to our department supporting fire operations in the unincorporated areas of the Clearwater Fire District. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions on this agenda? Vice Mayor?
You probably know what I'm going to ask, but what is a tiller?
A tiller is our truck that's located at 45. It's the one that bends in the middle and can go into tight spaces along the beach in our smaller neighborhoods. So it gives us really good access and maneuverability.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? City Attorney?
Thank you, Mayor. So I apologize, but this is a topic that I would actually like to discuss with the Finance Director and the City Manager's office before the council votes on this. Really not because of the item itself, but because of the manner in which we budget and fund it. There is some authority in Florida talking about committing to expenditures in future fiscal years, particularly when it relates to general fund dollars. Ms. Ravens and I were just talking about that. I apologize to the manager. I've not had a chance to discuss that with her. She was on a cruise. But that is something I would like to discuss with staff and roundtable before you vote on this item, just given the size of it and given the potential commitment of future general fund dollars that you have not actually received, and in a future budget year that you have not actually planned for or set a millage rate for or anything like that. We have done some things in the past where with petty money, we have actually done kind of pre-budgeting for that, but with general fund dollars, it gets a little bit different because typically under Florida law, you can only expend funds within a budgeted year. So that is just something I need to discuss with staff a little bit. Again, this is not a critique. This is just something that between the manager being out, between all the high profile items we had going on leading up to this, I just didn't get to catch it in time. So I'll take responsibility for that. But with the council's permission, I'd like a little bit of time to discuss that with staff before the council votes on it.
Okay. Councilmember Cuddy?
Yeah, maybe Chief Pettengill knows. I know that ordering these apparatus with such various lead times, doing so allows for a certain substantial discount in the very beginning. So that's why a lot of departments will do this. My question is, would we be able to work with 10-8 to see what that down payment would be to then make the proposal for the down payment to lock in pricing? Pay that since it's in this fiscal year, and then whatever it comes back to, maybe that's a solution we could look at. I mean, obviously, it's gonna be redrafted and stuff like that, but just trying to give a solution to a potential problem we're seeing right here, right now, so we lock in those pricings, because I'm just gonna assume that these apparatus are still 48-plus months out.
Yeah, that's correct. The tiller will be 49 months, and the 2 engines will be 52 months
Yeah,
out.
so there's a reason why you wanna lock in that pricing as soon as you can, because you're still getting a substantial discount, which I'm sure 10-8 rep or in the legislative text, it can break it down. Don't have it open right now, but maybe something like that.
For sure. It's just I think everyone agrees with the policy behind it in order to order it because they do have a very long lead time. There's price escalations. There's a lot of good reasons to order them in advance, but the method of committing general fund dollars prior to you setting a millage rate, prior to you having any of those funds, prior to you budgeting. Remember, we're going to have actually different elected officials at that time, at least one, if not multiple different elected officials in those fiscal years. And so I do believe there's some statutory authority on this. So we'll come up with a solution that makes sense. To your point, Councilmember Cotton, it could involve us putting the down payment now. It could involve approving an order subject to future appropriations. I've seen that done in some future contracts. It could be paying for it all out of non-general fund dollars, such as allocating it entirely from penny money or other sources. So I think there's a lot of workarounds, but it is something I'd like to roundtable with staff. And again, my apologies to everyone, including the manager, for not having had a chance to bring that up previously. So just kind of an oddball one. So if we could just have a little bit of time to look at that, I would appreciate it.
So take this one off consent? Consensus? Thank you. Okay, 7.2.
Appoint Mr. Gregory Keene for the remainder of the current four-year term ending June 30, 2027, as the trustee of the Clearwater Firefighters Supplemental Trust Fund.
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members, and a bunch of old familiar faces. My name's Tom Jensen. I'm the current plan administrator for the Supplemental Trust Fund for the firefighters. So we recently had a trustee step off the board. He was a resident trustee, almost 40 years he served, and sometimes it's hard to find people that committed, but it worked out well for a while. So with Ms. Call's help, we advertised through the city, and we have an applicant that we're presenting here to hopefully get him on the board and to serve the remainder of the four-year open term that ends in June of 27, I believe.
Okay. Any questions first? Or not, do we have consent?
Yes.
Thank you.
We have consent on 7.2. Thank you. 8.1.
Authorize a purchase order to Xylem Water Solutions.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Rich Gardner, Director of Public Utilities. Thank you for drinking my water, Mayor. The item before you today is the authorization of a purchase order for a sole source contract for flight pumps, parts, and service for the water and wastewater systems. The pumps are used to replace existing equipment in kind. Replacement of pumps with other manufacturers' equipment would require re-engineering and modification to the existing piping systems. We're recommending award to Xylem Inc. in the amount of $995,000. Bless you. This is a one-year contract from April 4th, 25 to April 3rd, 26, with the option for 2 one-year renewals. And this is, I wanted to show you guys a picture of a pump. These are our largest pumps at the Marshall Street facility. That's Dan Trueblood, the maintenance manager, and he also is the one that negotiated the 15% discount. We went from a 9.5% discount to 15%. So,
Yeah, thank you.
this is the 3 pumps together in the dry well. This is Mike, Dan again with the smallest pump, the smallest flood pump that we have. And this is a picture of one of the pumps that we would have to have refurbished. This is from Lift Station 58 over on McMullen Booth by the railroad tracks, and that'll be rebuilt under this contract. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Gardner? Okay. If not, do we have consent? We have consent on 8.1. Thank you. 9.1.
Provide direction to change the name of the Clearwater Airport back to the Clearwater Executive Airport.
Good afternoon again, Mayor, Council. Mike McDonald, Marine and Aviation Director. Staff is looking for direction on changing the name of Clearwater Airport back to Clearwater Executive Airport, which is in line with the industry standard. In March of 2023, FlyUSA was selected to operate the airport through a lease agreement. Within that agreement, they are investing heavily in capital projects, including a new terminal building and corporate hangars. They have elevated safety by getting rid of derelict and unairworthy aircraft and are in the process of implementing a new approach in constructing a rotating beacon. Barry Shevlin, president of Fly USA, is here and has a presentation for you guys, and afterwards we'll be happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, staff. I'm Barry Shevlin, the CEO of Fly USA. I'm your partner in managing and redeveloping the airport. As Mike mentioned, we took over about 2 years ago in March, and we've learned a lot in the last couple of years. And one of the things we've learned and why we're here today is that the word air park is something that we want to revisit and remove from the name. An air park typically refers to a residential airport, meaning an airport where the houses have access to a taxiway and/or have shade hangars or hangars where they park their planes next to their house, and that's obviously not what the Clearwater Air Park is. I think we'd like to return the name to the Clearwater Executive Airport. You may not know that when the airport was founded in 1939, that's what the name was. Closed for a couple of years, reopened after World War II, and then sometime in, I guess it was the early 80s, the name was changed to the Clearwater Air Park. Mike and I have tried to find out how or why that happened, and we haven't been able to. So hopefully this is an easy ask for you. Just so you know, we don't, Executive Airport is typically the name that's given to the general aviation airport that is near an international airport. If you think of Tampa International, and then you have Tampa Executive in North Tampa. You think of Orlando International, and then you have Orlando Executive in downtown. It's the common nomenclature, and we think that's appropriate for this facility. This in no way, shape, or form means that anything's going to change relative to the type of planes that are coming in. The runway's still only going to be 4,000 feet. It's still going to be the majority of the planes that come in are going to be piston planes, flight school planes. We are seeing a little bit more turboprop traffic that will increase, but certainly no scheduled commercial traffic or anything along those lines. So it will be maintaining the status quo, if you will. The same aircraft, same mission. Yeah. Well, I guess that's it. I'll open it up to any questions you guys.
Well
You could
said.
use a quick presentation at this point.
Yeah, you can. Very much appreciated.
Much shorter than some other slide presentations we've seen today, so thank you. So any questions, comments from the council?
Mayor, I just want to add one point. I don't remember if they said, or heard if they said it, but they did present it to the Marine and Aviation Advisory Board, and they were supportive of, or I'm sorry, the Aviation Advisory Board, and they were supportive of the change.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Honestly, there's not one constituent we've talked to that didn't agree that the name airport is not appropriate. We've talked to, the community representative on our board, the tenants, the city staff. I think it's just time for that change.
And I will add, I had conversation with FDOT on it too, so.
Councilmember Menino?
Yeah, I love the new branding. I appreciate all the work you and your staff put in there. I think it's important for our immediate community surrounding it to know whenever we start making a change like this and a discussion of this, fear of worst case scenario and, oh my gosh, what are they doing, creeps in. So I think it's, in your words said it in the presentation, you glossed over it pretty quick, but we're the same runway length and operational limits. The airport will continue serving the same private business aviation community that's been flying here for decades. So nothing's changing operationally, no runway additions and changes. This is
Correct.
strictly a name change and branding.
Exactly, that's correct. And, we do have our own little advisory board, and we have a representative from the community, and she was also, in favor of the change as well. So we have had some dialogue with the surrounding neighborhood through her.
Thank you.
Yeah, I like it.
Before I go,
All in agreement?
I do want to thank the staff and, thank you guys that the approach that they've taken to our partnership has really been incredible. And, we've had a lot of problems that we've had to address and deal with over the last couple of years. And it really does feel like a partnership, and I'm looking forward to continuing that. So thank you. You guys are great to work with.
So we're in agreement to, okay, thank you. It's your direction.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, 10.1.
Elect a council member to serve as vice mayor. Council members, as required by city charter, during the first meeting in April, you are required to elect a new vice mayor. According to council rules, there's a rotation established in rule number 5, and it would, right now it's scheduled to go to Councilmember Teixeira unless somebody recommends a change.
I'm good with that. Nominate Councilmember
I'm good with
Teixeira.
it.
We have
May I place it on
consent.
consent?
We have consent.
Yep.
All right. Reappoint Michael Grome.
I would
Sorry.
ask, though, next time around, I guess that was in because our elections were held at that time, that we would pick a new vice mayor. So would there be any, I mean, would we have to go to a referendum to change the charter, I guess, to move that back?
I think that's a good question. So we could, there's no imminent need to do that because the current council rules set up a rotation system among vice mayor. And so the reason Councilmember Teixeira is up right now is because she's council member number 5. If the council follows the existing rules, that would mean that in the following year, meaning in March of 2026, it would rotate to the council member at seat number 2, I guess. Which would be Councilmember Cotton. And so presumably he'll be here, for a while. And so then it would rotate until to Councilmember number 3 in 2027. And so if we follow the existing rubric, I believe it would be okay with our election cycle for the foreseeable future. However, if council decides to either change the rubric by which the vice mayor is appointed, or if we have unexpected vacancies in council, then that is probably something we would need to discuss. But yes, Mayor, to your point, it is a little bit of a vestige of the old election cycle, but it's one that is okay under our current system until we have either vacancies or something that causes a little bit of a tweak.
Thank you, just curious. Okay, 10.2.
Reappoint Michael Groman and Marvin Seipel to the Marine Advisory Board with terms expiring March 31st, 2029. Council members, they are currently serving and have completed their terms and are willing and eligible to be reappointed and serve on the board.
Any discussion?
I'm fine.
We're good.
We have consent?
Yep.
We have consent. 10.3.
Appoint Alicia Collins Andrews and Maury Losher to the Auditor Selection Committee for terms expiring March 31st, 2030. This is a committee required by charter, and it is for a 5-year term. And these are the only 2 individuals that we have for this actual committee. So they will be working with the finance director, and currently Councilmember Menino is the other individual on this committee who are going to help the finance director with the auditor selection.
Okay, any discussion?
No, I was very happy to see Miss Alicia Collins Andrews on there. She just graduated. We were all at her graduation from the Citizens Academy. She's very active in our community for kids, our neighborhood, and gives just about everything away she can. To see her jump into service for the city did not surprise me, and I support her 100%.
Great. Do we have consent?
Yep.
We have consent on 10.3. 11.1.
Mayor, 11.1 through 11.7 are second readings of ordinances.
Okay. Any further discussion over and above what we've already had?
Everyone left.
Okay, if not, yeah. The media has left, so I guess we're good to move on, so. 11.2.
Mayor, all of them, 11.1 through 11.7.
Oh, excuse me, they're all the same thing.
Through 11.7.
Yeah.
Through 11.4, right? 4.7.
Well, they're all second readings.
Yeah, all the way.
All to 7.
All the way.
All of the second readings are put under city attorney's items.
Got
so.
it, got it. Okay, I don't think we've normally had 7 of them on there, so that's what confused me some. Move to item 12, city manager verbal reports.
Yes, thank you, sir. I just have 2 things. One, we are going to extend our waiving of the permit fees for repairs related to the storm. That was set to expire today, and we've decided that we will go ahead and extend that through June 1st.
Okay.
And then the second item I just wanted to update you on is, I know I spoke individually to each of you about a question we were posed, and by we, it was our LMS group, about how to handle the funding that was provided by the state. Our representative did bring back our feedback, and I was just notified this morning that they are going to do a formal survey with this, so we'll have an opportunity to have additional conversations about how we want those funds, our vote as to how we want those funds to be distributed. So she did give them our opinion, and then I think because there was just some uncomfortableness with that, they decided that they're going to go through another formal process. So I just wanted to provide you with that update.
All right, we'll move then to item 13, city attorney verbal reports.
Nothing at this time, Mayor.
Item 14.1, Councilmember Cotton.
Yeah, I made some brief notes. When last time this came up, I didn't really have anything because I didn't want to spill my presentation. But it was, my notes are to go towards each one of your concerns posed from the last time we had this discussion, you know, not making it political, getting your fluoride in our water system, and then studies. Can you trust studies? Can you not trust studies, right? So I'm going to point out the 2024 federal court ruling. That was an Obama-appointed judge that made that ruling. So you have that. We can see that the HHS secretary that's currently elected, he was a Democrat, switched to independent. He is now our HHS secretary. This, for me, is just about public health. You put away the political organizations and just look at the overarching systemic medicating that we're essentially doing. However you believe these studies are going, I mean, we're probably not going to change your mind at that point, as the Surgeon General alluded to. But I would just challenge you, like if one of those studies is accurate, or considerably accurate, then that means that there is some sort of health associated risk that we're taking. And maybe some of us up here are doctors. I doubt any of us up here are medical doctors, but you might have a doctorate in whatever field you studied. But I can tell you that any dentist, any doctor that even comes on Thursday night, you have to get consent before giving a medication. Even as a paramedic, I have to get consent, unless you're unconscious. And then even then, I do medication checks with the other clinicians on scene before giving something, right? So no matter if it's 1 milliliter of fentanyl or 0.1 milliliters of fentanyl, it's fentanyl that I'm giving, it's a medication. The FDA sees fluoride as a medication. No matter you're giving it 0.7 mLs or 10 mLs, it's fluoride, it's a medication. You know, in my opinion, it's the political red tape and bureaucratic red tape that put us in this situation. The FDA sees it as a medication, but we'll turf this off to the EPA because it's a lower standard or a lower setting, and then you guys can deal with it. I think that that's a problem. It's why I ran for election and why I think that government should stay out of those things and give consent, you know, to the people and our constituents that we're going through. So I want to point out that 97% of Western Europe does not fluoridate their water. We're seeing the same signs of tooth problems decline as we are in the United States. So we have fluoridation, they do not. Here, they are on par with our health problems, right? They're not increasing in any dental health risk in Western Europe. Why? Because we have toothpaste, mouthwash, topical agents that you can use to properly fight these dental diseases, not to mention going to dentist, right? So really, I just want to say that I'll be back with a more formalized, more in-depth presentation for you guys come Thursday. But really just ask yourself, if there is one research study that does show there is a potential risk, whatever that risk is, whether it's the pineal gland, whether it's your thyroid, whether it's your kidneys, is that worth us mass medicating our public without their consent? We clearly know where I stand. It's a no. But I really do appreciate both sides coming out and explaining today, from Dr. Latipo, Surgeon General, coming out, Dr. Marlin coming out, and Dr. Mullet, the opposing, for taking their time and coming to give us hopefully better education. I really challenge you, please dive into it. You can get stuck in it for sure, but you'll educate yourselves and be really happy you did. And maybe this hits me more than it hits y'all, because I've got 2 young kids, which it affects. They drink water, Clearwater's water, like their fish, and it's really nerving to me, to be honest with you, because I do have filters. I do, but they're still going to the filtered tap or the refrigerator that both have filters, and as stated, fluoride does not get filtered out of it. And to one other thing that I want to point out is that we need to make sure that when we're talking about regular fluoride in the environment, it's not the same as a chemical added fluoride. So like a hydrofluoric acid that's added is not the same as just regular groundwater fluoride found through rock deterioration. There's a difference in that. I mean, aluminum, I'm pretty sure everybody has heard the negative effects of aluminum on the body. And if aluminum is a carrier of that, I mean, that's just another potential side effect. So I appreciate you all listening to me. I really hope that you'll really give this a real good thought. And at the very basics of it is just think about consent. We're making a medical decision for a mass population. So I appreciate it. Look forward to discussing this more on Thursday. Thank you for standing by for my projects for the hours that we were here doing that. So I appreciate you all. Thank you.
Anybody else? Vice Mayor?
Okay. You know, before Councilman Cotton brought this up, I really didn't think much about it. But it's like drinking from a fire hose the last 30 days with all the both sides and the emails coming in, and I've really researched this. And I can tell you, it's like stepping in quicksand. I mean, you hear good things from one side, and then you hear good things from the other side, and then trying to filter all this out, it's difficult. I've even looked at council meetings in other cities that have gone through this decision-making, and I know we're not the only ones that have this hard decision to make. But I can tell you this, I've been, I try to keep up on children's health, and I see a decline in the health of all of us the last 20 years. And I was watching an interview yesterday that I thought was really interesting. It was a surgeon that said, and I guess he did pancreatic surgery on, and he says he's never seen before children that have colon cancer and pancreatic cancer. Now children are starting to get that. It's usually something you see at middle age or above. Something's going on. It's either in what we're eating, what we're drinking. When I was born in the 50s, I probably had 4 shots, when I was a baby. Kids now get 25 to 30 vaccinations. And I agree. I think that any time that you're giving in, it's just, I know it's supposed to be good, but, we've seen autism rates soar in kids. And maybe I'm getting off track, but I know that we're not getting healthier, and I'm starting to look at everything we do now. And you know what? I kind of agree. I think that the only problem I have is if we decide that we're taking fluoride out of our water in Clearwater, 40% of our water is bought from the county. There's going to be a whole section of Clearwater, even if we take it out, they're still going to get fluoridated water. I don't think the public even knows this. It's hard. But I mean, we can make a start and then see where it goes. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. I mean, I have made, I guess, a decision. I've looked at so much in the past 30 days that I just think something needs to be done. So that's it.
Councilman Menino?
You want to respond?
I just want to say, to your point, the city produces water for 93,600 residents, which is 63% of our population. The county does produce water in correlation with us for 54,900 residents, is 37%. So there's the actual percentage I got from staff.
Yeah, thank you. I think we're all in the same places. We got this topic, and thank you, Mr. Cotton, for bringing it up again. This is one of those probably uncomfortable situations to be in, but if anybody's going to take it, I think this council can handle it. And I know we've all done probably too much homework, and it's easy to go down the rabbit hole on research and click this study and that study, and then you find out, well, this one's low bias and high quality, and this one's high bias, and it's just it does get like quicksand. I completely agree with what you're saying. They're all valid points. I think I greatly appreciate having both sides here presenting. I think it was important to have both sides of the issue. It just amazes me that we have so many challenges in our city, and we can even have on the agenda the topic of the Church of Scientology, and we've honestly probably received 20 times more emails in the last couple weeks on fluoride.
No.
I have. I can speak for myself, and I see a lot of other head shaking. We've received a whole heck of a lot, and I appreciate all of them and the ability of them trying to educate us and give us different viewpoints. But this is a very interesting situation. I look forward to Thursday seeing your presentation and having another discussion on it.
Councilmember Teixeira?
There's a lot of things that are being said, and in my mind, oversimplification. One of the reasons why we're sicker is because we're alive. If you look at our how long we're lasting this generation versus 2 generations ago, there weren't many people who lasted 80 years old. So our life expectancy has grown or has prolonged, and therefore we're alive enough to have more illnesses, and that's not being factored. So when there's a lot of these oversimplification comments, it kind of makes me cringe, because there's a lot of things we need to consider. For example, how many of us would be alive today if our grandparents weren't vaccinated? How does that take into account? Another thing that I always feel, for example, Alzheimer's and dementia, it's so prevalent now because we're living longer. So there's so many different things to consider, and sometimes oversimplification is almost like guilting someone into making a decision, which I don't like. But even if we're going down that route of either making a decision for or against, don't you think it's premature, since we're getting some of the water from the county and the state is actually looking at this very issue? So that's something to consider as well. So even if we say, okay, let's get rid of it, so then only some of our citizens are going to be affected and others are not? I don't know. It's a lot of things to think about.
Councilmember Cotton?
I mean, yeah, just to respond to that, I don't think that it was oversimplified. I think we had 2 Surgeon General, we had a UF health researcher, and then we had a Dr. Mullet, who I personally have known for decades, who spoke to both sides, giving you, or us all, and everybody that's watching or will watch this, credible information and things that we need to make a decision on. And I see us as being the elected officials that should make a decision. We were elected to make tough decisions that are uncomfortable, no matter what the federal government or state government are doing. And if I can save 63% of my population from what I think is a public health problem and or detriment to their being, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to bring it to the dais. And quite frankly, I hope that this gets the ball rolling for the rest of our county. Since the beginning of the year, this has been voted on in 20 different counties and or municipalities, with 15 of them voting unanimously to get rid of it. So I do think that, many supercomputers at our fingertips. I think a lot of people do have access to relevant information and are being more advantageous to go and do research on their own. Maybe that's because of recent political climates and a non-trust for mainstream media and allowing people to go out to independent things or think for themselves, which I'm glad for. But I think that's why you're seeing an uptick in people saying, no, what was that again? What's in this vaccine? And starting to question pharmaceutical manufacturers and their elected officials. So I think now is a time to make a decision. We're clearly not trailblazers because multiple other cities have already done it, including 5 cities. I think I'm only going to be able to name Claremont and Winter Haven, I believe, have never added fluoride in their water. There's 3 other cities I just don't know off the top of my head in Florida, So I understand. I don't feel as though it was oversimplified. That's why I asked, how long does everybody need to do their own research, to try and get the data that you specifically need to make a more educated decision? That's why I asked the Surgeon General through multiple emails to please come and make a presentation, to which I'm very thankful that he did. And that's why I think that I'm wanted to put this on the agenda to make us make a decision. Like, I think that it's important for, especially my little kids, right? Like, you look at any child and just the wonder and awe and what their life could lead to. And are we doing something that could lead to that demise? The lower IQ point leading to less than a less salary range of $24,000 over the span of their life. I mean, we're not only potentially lowering IQs with mass medication, but we're now affecting those individuals potentially economically, which was pointed to in another study, which I'll get to on Thursday, a little bit more detail. So, I mean, this is just having multiple ramifications that continue to compound on each other. So, I don't know. That's why I feel like it's important to get to and try and do the right thing for our people. So.
Well, I'll weigh in. I struggle with the sense of urgency on this issue. To your point, Councilmember Cotton, we're here to make tough decisions for the benefit of our citizens, but we're primarily here to make decisions for issues that are impacting our local Clearwater residents. On this issue, as I said before, I got an email on this issue from Joe Smith, and it won't have an address, won't say where they're from, and when I reply back, Joe, I don't know, thank you for your mail, thank you for sharing your thoughts. Where do you live at in Clearwater? I would say 90% or more do not live in Clearwater. Many of them don't even live in Pinellas County. It seems like, and I don't know about the other municipalities that consider this, the other county governments, but it seems like this is an issue that's being pushed on the municipalities by folks outside the municipality. I just have not heard Clearwater citizens who drink our tap water really express a lot of concern or thoughts one way or the other. So, and I asked the Surgeon General earlier, you know, why is the state, which highly regulates drinking water, and why is the state not taking action on it? I mean, we were all up in Tallahassee. I've been up there twice in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and we were all up there together, and Lord knows they're trying to tell us what to do on all kinds of things that are local issues. So if this is that important to water quality and public health, why are they not addressing it? And he said there's a bill before, and I did read this, there's a bill before the legislature now. So they don't drop the handkerchief on the General Assembly or the legislative session until May 2nd. This could be an issue that we're going back and forth and spending a lot of time on that could be basically a moot point, you know, here, if they pass a bill that says nobody can put it into the water anymore. So with the lack of local citizens really coming out and being vocal on this issue, and with not knowing what the state's going to do here in the next 30 days on it, I just question whether or not, and as we heard today, and as we've seen through the information we have gotten, it's complicated. I mean, there are good arguments both ways. And I'm wondering why we're rushing in to making a decision on it when it appears like there could be some movement. And I don't know if it's before the county yet or not. Has the county discussed it?
Pinellas County.
Pinellas.
No, sir, not Pinellas.
Okay, so, you know, it's, the county has a Board of Health. I mean, we have, you know, our city of Clearwater, we're governed by the County Board of Health too on public health issues. So I just wonder if it's premature for us, a little bit, for us to address it now when there's so much that could be happening, particularly on a state level, here in the next 30 days. So that would be all I would share.
Can I respond?
Yeah.
With that, again, I would just say, if we were to pass this Thursday and it does go through, and then they pass it June, July, we've just been ahead of the 8 ball. And now at least 100% of Clearwater's residents will be able to not have to deal with fluoride in their water. The 63% have already been getting it. taken out, and now the rest of the state is now going to be taking it out. I guess that would be my only retort to that part. And then earlier you asked the question in regards to going to Walmart or buying your water. Everybody has their own water bottle. I would say the adverse to that is if you want fluoride, you can go and buy fluoride. You can go buy fluoridated water at Walmart, Sam's Club, when you go to buy your toothpaste and mouthwash, you know. Another thing is it's costing taxpayers $50,000 annually. If we're really concerned that certain community groups are not getting fluoride, we could use a portion of that and buy toothpaste and give it to neighborhoods, or when we go out on Neighborhoods Day and pass it out if somebody needs toothpaste and they don't have access to it. I mean, there's just so many different programs and ways of educating the public on to get proper fluoride for dental oral health now, that's why we see 97% of Western Europe isn't even fluoridating their water, because of modern medicine and the access and ability to get fluoride through other products. So that would be just my little argument there, is why wait when we can do something now, take care of 63% and then 100.
Well, I guess my take on it is, why are we in a hurry to address it when I'm just not hearing Clearwater residents? Are we in a hurry to address it because it's of concern to folks who don't live here? And it just doesn't seem to be a pressing issue for the folks that live here in our city. And ultimately, those are the folks that elect us, those are the folks that we have to make a priority. Are we spending our time on things that our local citizens care about? Or are we spending our time investigating, researching and things where we're just not seeing from our local citizens feedback to do it to help folks who are outside of Kirk County?
My question back would, are you asking, or are you just expecting them to come back to you? Because I can tell you right now, in the circles that I'm in, all of those young families want fluoride out of their water. I have a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old that drink water like a fish. My daughter does not drink anything but water and apple juice. And it's all coming from our filtered tap water. So just because we are receiving emails, and I got an email from a dentist who must be a little bit elderly, and he left the talking points of the dental association saying, we need every dentist, orthodontist, and everybody to send emails. So we're going to accept the emails from the dentist, but then say we haven't received enough from the community members. I mean, if you're receiving an email from a citizen, yes, if they're ours, it makes it more important, but at least the citizen's reaching out to let you know, hey, it's on my radar. And maybe it's just that they don't know who's watching this at 4:20 on a Monday afternoon. Those people that are actively engaged and want to be in it, right? I mean, I don't know what else to say other than I've had the conversations with a multitude of different young families, and they would like to see it gone.
That's your personal experience. My experience was, everywhere, when I went into the neighborhoods, if I did hear anything about fluoride, because it wasn't about that, it was mostly about the church at Garden Avenue, was you're a nurse, you have a research company, you're not buying all this, right? So you have your personal experience, but I do too, and my conversations that I got was they're in support of it staying on. So that's why we have 5 people, right? So it's tough. It's tough. Finally.
No, I just want to share, so we're all on the same page. Tallahassee is discussing this, and it's Senate Bill 700. It's the Florida Farm Bill. That will be on the floor at the Capitol, and by May 2nd, they will have a decision on where it goes. But SB 700, if anybody's interested in seeing it.
Okay. All right, we've talked a lot about fluoride today, so if there's nothing further, we'll move to the next 14.2, and that is Vice Mayor, you want to talk about billboards.
Okay, billboards. So I'd like staff to amend and soften the nonconformity provisions in our code. Specifically, I'd like to allow property owners to repair and place their nonconforming billboards or other non-conforming signs that were damaged or destroyed through no fault of the property owner. I'd like to apply these changes only to those properties in which the billboard or the sign would have been allowed to remain in Clearwater indefinitely, if not for unexpected damage. I don't intend for the amendment to benefit or apply to anyone who illegally erected or installed the sign in the first place. Nor would the new rule apply to any property for which the signage is already governed by an existing agreement with the city, such as voluntary annexation agreement or development agreement. So I guess what I'm just saying is there's specifically some signs, 3 or 4 of them that were damaged by the hurricane and not allowed to rebuild. I'd like to at least give those people permission to go ahead and fix their billboards.
Okay. Councilmember Menino?
Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay, I too heard of this issue, as we all have. Originally, we had a long fight as a city to make sure that it's a no billboard city, right? And there's no billboards allowed to be erected in the city of Clearwater. I took a drive down US 19 and counted 17 on the east side and 15 on the west side. And I was like, well, we obviously have billboards. And those ones are grandfathered in. I think with this, I'm too sympathetic with you to those 3 signs. Is that what 3 property owners whose signs were damaged during the storm? I think there is a balance. If we're saying as a city we want to get out of having the billboard business because we can't regulate content, and they can have any sort of content up there whether you like it or not. If you open Pandora's box on billboards, they could be everywhere and you have no idea on the content. So I'm not interested in opening up Pandora's box and allowing billboards in the community. With this specific situation, I think if it comes to storms or vandalism or a drunk driver speeds off 19 and takes somebody's sign down, are we going to tell them that they shouldn't be allowed to put it back up? I have a level of compassion there. So while I do support the city's stance on let's find that runway to get out of the billboard business, I think I also have a bit of that compassion to, it is damage to a storm or some unexpected consequence, should we allow that sign owner to rebuild? I think that opens up additional discussions, though. Are we mandating they put them in the same place? Are we giving, if you have to discuss on can they be relocated, because we're now having a new sign, better quality, probably deeper down into the soils, heavier equipment. So can it be put somewhere, erected somewhere that's deemed safe and sustainable? So we, not pigeonhole them into that very same location, I think is probably worth discussing. But I too am with you. I'm sympathetic with those 3 especially that lost their signs damaged during the storm. But I'm not in support of opening Pandora's box to allowing billboards back in the city. And that's where I'm at with it.
I agree.
Okay, Councilmember Cotton?
Yeah, when I saw this come up and talking with the city attorney about it, I empathize as well, 100%. It's kind of like my mind of the people that, the 50% rule with FEMA. It's ridiculous in my mind. Like, if you had something and a storm damaged it, you should be able to build it back because of the act of God back to what it was. I understand for health, public safety purposes of having to maybe make something come back up to code. But this is kind of where I correlate billboards to as well. Here these were functioning, operating billboards that were grandfathered in for whatever reason. And I empathize with these people too. They had a way to generate revenue for their families, and then a storm came through, and now that's going to cease to exist because of our current ordinances or rules. So I would be in favor of looking or drafting something that would allow them to rebuild their billboard. Again, it is going to open up the discussion of what style or what kind. That's definitely an interesting one, but that's where I'll stand on that as well, is be open to the discussion for sure.
Vice Mayor?
Well, let me ask the city attorney, is there any other way to bring a non-conforming signs up to code without having to amend the sign code?
Well, it depends. I mean, for non-billboard signs, yes, oftentimes that's the case. But for billboards, in my opinion, because they're prohibited in the city, I don't know that you could ever necessarily have a conforming, off the top of my head, I don't know if we could ever have a conforming billboard because we blanket prohibit them. Whereas for other types of signage, yes. A lot of other non-billboard signs I've seen get damaged or destroyed, whether it's through active nature, vandalism, et cetera. But off the top of my head, I don't know that you could ever do that for a billboard if it's prohibited. So that's my gut reaction. Don't know if either the manager or staff has anything to add to that.
So these signs that, I guess there's 3 signs that actually were damaged in the storm. Are they were built in the 80s and 90s. Is that before, I mean, they were grandfathered in, but the grandfathering law means if they're 50% damaged, they cannot be rebuilt.
Under the current rubric in Clearwater, we have a nonconformity ordinance that specifies as follows, and I think it's a good time to have this conversation, especially with having newly elected council members. So keep in mind that in general, the city prohibits billboards. As Councilmember Menino pointed out, the city had kind of fought that war for decades. There was lots of litigation over it, long predating any of our tenures here in the city. A lot of it went back to the 80s, in fact. So the question, though, is how do you deal with billboards that were lawfully erected at the time? When I say lawfully erected, I mean those billboards either that were erected prior to the adoption of the city's billboard ordinances, meaning erected prior to the mid-1980s, or those billboards that were lawfully erected in unincorporated Pinellas County, but subsequently annexed into the city. So that's really the category that we're talking about. But as far as the city's ordinance, the city has banned the erection of new billboards since the mid-1980s, and that has been defended pretty consistently. So the city has an ordinance called a nonconformity ordinance that says that if you have a billboard that is illegal today, which they all are, because again, Clearwater prohibits billboards. If you have a billboard that's illegal today, but it was lawfully erected at the time, meaning it predated the 1985 ordinance, or it was part of unincorporated Pinellas County where it was allowed, how do we deal with those non-conforming billboards, which would be prohibited today, are prohibited today, but were lawfully erected at the time? So when we talk about non-conformity, that's really what we're talking about. The current ordinance that the city has in place states as follows. If a non-conforming billboard exists, it can remain indefinitely in the city. The city does not take action to try to affirmatively remove or tear down non-conforming billboards. However, if a non-conforming billboard is damaged or destroyed, meaning damaged to more than 50% of its value, or if it's destroyed, then the property owner is required to come into compliance with today's law, meaning that they cannot either reconstruct their billboard, repair it more than 50%, et cetera. The argument behind this, and let me say that I'm completely neutral as to the policy wisdom, so I'm not taking sides on it, but the argument that's been articulated to me is that because the city has banned billboards for decades, at some point over time through attrition, you're trying to bring people into compliance with the law. And so while there's no action being taken immediately as of the 1980s, eventually over a span of years or decades, because billboards do get destroyed or get damaged over time, eventually everybody comes into compliance with the law. That's the logic behind it as it's been explained to me. But the council does control the nonconformity ordinance. And so to the vice mayor's point, the council does have the power through the land development process to amend that ordinance. You have the power to soften it. I don't know if you could tighten it. That would be a harder one, but certainly could soften it, with significant ease. So those are some policy questions for the council to consider. I know that Lauren from planning has been very involved in the conversation. She's provided a lot of really good background information for the manager and myself. I know she's not here today, so I don't know if the council would have any interest in deferring the conversation until she returns, or if the manager has any interest in that, but that's the background. That's the background as I understand it.
I think I would like that because unfortunately she's not here today. And this is something that I think we should have a conversation on. And I'd like to see something as to how we could do that before I say, yeah, just go ahead and do it. Because I know it's a one-way door, it's may turn out to be not as we, one of those things we we thought it was a good thing, but non-intended consequences, you know. So,
Councilmember Teixeira?
To your point, Mr. Margolis, the whole idea of grandfathering, like you just said, is to phase it out, right? So these are billboards that were there in the 80s. It took a 100-year storm to bring them down. That's 45 years later. So I also look at that perspective, you know? Like, we have to be fair. It is not conforming. There's always two sides, but I do appreciate that, the fact that the whole grandfathering thing is about phasing out. And these are 40-year-old billboards that took 2 storms to bring down, and now if we re-erect them, then how do we do that so it's fair to everyone? Because we are a no billboard city. Something to consider.
Anybody else?
Just quick, just so I understand, how do we treat a property that has a billboard if it's sold? Do the rights of that billboard stay with the property owner, or do they transfer to the new owner?
Generally, and I hope I don't get proven wrong on this, but generally speaking, you know, property rights run with the land, so a transfer of ownership would not, in my opinion, ordinarily take them outside of the ambit of, you know, of those property rights. Again, without having discussed with staff, hopefully I didn't just put my foot in my mouth, but ordinarily most property rights do run with the land. So a transfer, because you got to remember that a transfer of ownership in and of itself does not change the nature of the nonconformity, right? Because the violation that we're discussing is the presence of the billboard. It's really not a matter of who owns it necessarily.
Yeah, it's more, the question was more geared towards if we are still searching for a runway to get out of the billboard business, if somebody did sell a property that didn't own that land, would they now lose that grandfather right? The billboard comes down because the new owner was not grandfathered in.
Under our current ordinance, I do not believe a transfer of ownership would matter. If so directed by council, I may be able to draft something to that effect, but I'd be very apprehensive, to be candid with you. One of the concerns I would have, and if it's the direction of council, I'll research it, but one of the concerns I'd have is that you know, as the government, we don't usually get to pick and choose favored and disfavored property owners or favored or disfavored citizens. And so for us to say that we prefer today's owner, but we don't like a future owner, I think may cause some constitutional concerns. So it certainly would be something I'd have to research, whether we could lawfully and constitutionally draw that distinction between today's property owners versus future buyers, future owners of that property. Candidly, I would have to research that.
Like our grandfathered short-term rentals, if they sell their property, does that new owner still have that grandfathered right to a short-term rental in our city?
The short-term rentals are a different topic because that was the subject of specific litigation, as the Vice Mayor is well aware. And so there are some parameters.
Thank you for bringing that up.
I didn't bring your
That's
name
number
up.
2, David.
I didn't throw you under that one.
I think with that topic, although there are a lot of analogies to this one, because the short-term rentals were subject to some very specific litigation, you know, there's some language in that ruling and in that judge's order that relates to that topic, would not necessarily govern the billboard topic.
Interesting.
I just wanted to say that, you know, Lauren's at a conference, but she did prepare staff to be here today, and Rebecca is here, and she could potentially answer some questions, so
I'd be
if you
thrilled.
had any questions.
That sounds great.
Well, but it's an important issue. So,
Yeah.
At least for me,
Let's wait.
I'd
I'd
rather
like to
the
listen.
director be
Correct.
back. Nothing against you, but sure, I'm probably okay with you not to have to come up and.
She's like,
For me, I have to ask ourselves, are we being unfair to the other property owners who would like to put up a billboard? But because of a moratorium, haven't been able to do so for a long time by essentially allowing some of these folks to erect a new billboard instead of repairing the one they have there. And I think, to your point, you said that typically when you put in a moratorium like that and you grandfather properties in, the concept is that over time, they will deteriorate and you'll eliminate all billboards. But you're being respectful for those who already have them at the time. And so if you allowed one of these property owners to erect a new billboard, you're extending the life out of that billboard past what I think, arguably is unfair to the other property owners that could put one up. So I don't really have a strong feeling one way or the other, but that is one of my concerns is, are we being fair to the other property owners who could by allowing these folks to essentially, regardless of the reasons why, erect a new billboard in place of the one that could have potentially been repaired. So with that, you're okay with tabling it to the?
I was gonna say, I would even be okay with maybe even just allowing them to repair it then to what it was, something like that. It's whatever, Lauren, I guess we should just defer to.
I would rather wait till
Yeah.
Lauren's here, and then we can give us time to think about a little more about it.
Yeah. So direction is whenever you're ready, we'll put it back on the agenda to discuss it further. Okay, thank you. Next one is 14.3, and this one is mine. Parks and Recreation Long-Term Operational Sustainability. This came out of a conversation I had with city manager just to talk about a little bit out of the budget conversation about how can we make all of our departments, but particularly Parks and Recreation, more sustainable, and looking at what we see in my professional life and other communities see. Many communities have a 5-year plan, business pro forma, to particularly look at Parks and Recreation where we have market competitive assets and market competitive programs. Out of that, the city manager suggested I put it on the agenda for council discussion because that would appear to be, in her view, a departure from the philosophy of the council's past, including the previous council, that a focus on determining, whether or not we're being, I wouldn't, we hesitate to use profitable because the reality is in Parks and Recreation, you're never going to be profitable with it. You're just trying to be sustainable and take the weight off the taxpayers. But that's the reason I asked her to put it on, is your recommendation that we put it on here today to discuss.
Yeah, so just a little bit of clarification. When we were going through, the mayor and I, our one-on-ones, the profit and loss statements of the rec centers individually, it was a question was posed as to, what were we going to do about those profit centers those rec centers that are operating at a loss. And so the response in terms of what we're doing for that is, and it's not just at the Parks and Rec level, but operate organizationally. We've asked all of the departments to take a look at their fee structures and see if they are competitive with surrounding municipalities that offer those similar services. So that's one of the things that we're doing. That information will be ready and compiled by the time we get to the budget conversations. The second thing that we're doing, and this came out of our strategic plan session, is that in the new year, so long as the budget is approved, we will be looking for a company that will help us in terms of whether it be fundraising or sponsorships, things such as that. So those are the two things that we are working on that could have impacts on those things, but there wasn't anything else. And when we were giving some examples, it's a matter of the services that we're providing because it's a service that we've said we need to provide, and it's not relative to exactly what it brings back in terms of revenues. Our swimming program is probably one of the more notable ones that I've had a conversation with Parks and Rec about. It was at the time deemed that we wanted to make sure that we offered swim lessons to children because of being in Florida and all those reasons. That is not a that program does not pay for itself at all. But it was a decision that we want to offer that service, not relative to the revenues that it could bring. So it's more about if they're policy decision that council wants to discuss to change, our focus on some of those programming, or to even set a policy that says the rec centers have to have a certain percentage in terms of like their profit to loss, and other cities do that. So those are certainly things that we could work on, and we had a great conversation. We had a team meeting in preparation of this with all the managers in Parks and Rec, and they have some good ideas in terms of possible revenue generating things that'll help offset those things. And then there's also, they can accomplish it by, eliminating some programs and stuff like that as well. But we needed to know what the policy decision from council is.
So really all I wanted was a plan. I mean, it's typical difficult conversations. It's to try to make sure we're talking about dialogue. And the dialogue is, how can we make our, which is one of our largest departments, largest expenditure, but how can we make those services we're providing the community more sustainable? I just heard on the news this morning where the Speaker Perez wants to reduce the sales tax, but I hear this morning that the governor wants to increase the homestead exemption to give folks real property tax relief. Well, I can tell you, if they do that, it's going to affect our budget pretty soon. We all know in 2008, 2009, departments like Parks, Recreations, when a recession comes, it's really a luxury. I would say luxury, but it's not what some communities consider essential services. So those are the folks that bear the brunt of that. I just want our community to have, our city to have a plan for making our park and recreation more sustainable. So when hard times come, the governor wants to cut back on the budget. We've got to look that it's not the first place we go to Parks and Rec, we've got to cut back. What I don't want to do is, this came up during the campaign, I don't want to privatize parks. I don't want to keep one kid from going to summer camp that isn't already going. I don't want one kid to pay $1 more to participate in the rec center. I don't want to turn, said, if you want to turn our rec centers into profit centers, I've been in this business long enough. You're never going to turn any rec center into a profit center. Really, competitive athletic facilities, you're not going to do that. But you can make them sustainable. And it's not just a matter of cutting services or charging more. It's how you market events. And an example is, I love the Sea Blues Festival. It's fantastic. The performers we draw for Sea Blues Festival, top tier. But when, I believe you were up there on stage with, was it just you, were you?
It was Lena.
Lena, yeah, three of us were up there. And the nonprofit organizers on stage going, boy, you all need to come out and support this in bigger numbers. We just don't have the attendance we should be having for this kind of thing. So that trickles down to the bottom line, whether we make money or we break even on an event, how many people attend. So communities would look at, how are we marketing that event? Are we using the right marketing partners to get people to attend? Your sponsorship money, the folks, the vendors, typically the more people that you're attracting to an event, the more they're willing to participate and pay to be there. So it's that kind of plan, how we can maybe look differently at our market competitive assets, like we do the Sound, and our market competitive programs. We have programs that the City of Clearwater isn't the only place in the community you can get these programs, recreational programs. So just seeing how we can increase attendance and do a lot of things, but having a plan over 5 years, that's our goal, is to try to increase the bottom line. I appreciated the statistics that were shared on where we rank, as far as average, national average, on percentage we, subsidize. What I would share with you is, I don't want to be average. I don't want the city to be average in anything. We have one of the 15 best white sand beaches in the entire world. And so throughout the city, whether it's, we're happy to work out collective bargaining agreements with the fire and police. We want to be above average when in public safety in all of our areas. And so this is just one area that I would like to see us agree that we want our city to be a leader in the country as far as how we're making the way we provide more sustainable by taking a big look and having a plan for how we're going to market our events if we can. If we have events where folks just aren't interested in attending, if we need to reevaluate, those events. but just to take a holistic look and have a plan as a team for how we're going to make Parks and Rec more sustainable. Yeah.
You know, it was kind of eye-opening to me, and you were the one that asked, how many people are at the Sea Blues Festival from Clearwater? There was like 5 hands that went up out of, you know, there was a lot of people that weren't from Clearwater there. I mean, not that that's a bad thing. It's a good thing because they're coming in to enjoy it, but yeah, I agree with you. I think we ought to market it a little bit different, and because if we're doing things for our citizens in Clearwater, I think a plan is a good thing to have.
Thank you. Obviously, extremely passionate about our parks and recs in our community, and I think one of the many things that makes our community special is our parks and recreation, not just department, but the amenities throughout our community. And to have 110 beautiful parks is amazing, and 6 aquatic centers, and our community is just blessed. I think where in marketing events, I think that's a whole different topic. I'm 100% on. Let's market events. Let's try to grow them. Let's get our people connected to the events. To start putting revenue levels on different recreation centers in our community. I mean, they're all a little bit different in a sense of the Long Center was not built to be a revenue driver, weekend tournaments. You can see that by A, the lack of parking, but B, watch when a basketball team shows up and where the parents have to go compared to where the kids go to play basketball. They get ushered outside the building. They're not even allowed inside, upstairs and through a up-top look zone. So that's not established necessarily to be some marketed commercial event. I think we just have to be careful anytime we're talking about our parks and recreation in our community, and when we equate success or sustainability to revenues or profits, I get scared, because what you're leaving out is the importance of quality of life and health and longevity and social growth and youth development. And those, to me and our community, those metrics are immeasurable, and hopefully they go on for generations and generations. But I think there's a balance there to be struck. I hope we recognize that balance. But I am for finding ways to look at some ways to market better and to increase attendance to events and find ways. I mean, I just saw a video today, went out and checked out our Morningside for the next 2 weeks, as Eisenhower Elementary doing a swim program for the next 2 weeks. Hundreds of kids learning to swim for the first time. And I was like, oh boy, here we go. Who pays for that? Well, JWB and CFY pay for that, the lifeguards and the buses. The city does not pay for it. We provide the facility, and I just think those type of partnerships that you've discussed before, Mayor, are vitally important. They provide so much to the quality of life of our community. So I'm with you. I just think we need to make sure that we keep a mind on balance, and not to put all the value in a profit and loss statement or revenues is my only concern.
And again, nobody's talking about cutting anything. Yeah. Look, we're not going to make money, and you just don't. I mean, but can we become more efficient? Yes. And really, at the end of the day, it's to try to protect our people and the programs that we have, because we were all up there in Tallahassee. I mean, we just do not know what's coming down the pipe for us in our budget. And if whatever is done there is to save taxpayers money, we're going to be in a really tight spot to justify raising the millage when the state has tried to benefit them by cutting their taxes. So, and this isn't. I talked with Mr. Cater, the other day. I mean, this isn't a criticism of folks at Parks and Rec. I love our Parks and Rec. I was down Saturday for a 5K with the Coast Guards. Fantastic, small event, but excellently run. They figured out a way to do it with a small group where we didn't have to close the street. We only had 2 police officers down there. I mean, it was Yeah, let's continue. Some of it, they probably need some help. We probably need, when it comes to marketing, like the city manager said, on sponsorships and some things, finding those. They don't have the resources internally to do that, so we need to look at giving them the resources to go out and get some help in these areas. But the point is just to make us more efficient at the end of the day. And by doing so, make them more sustainable and also to make sure we're protecting these programs and services for the community in case we do have an economic downturn, we're on top of it. Okay, anything else on that? Okay, then we'll move to item 15, new business. Any new business? You got 5?
Oh, we have
you
enough.
got-
got a lot.
You got 7 minutes before I turn the clock off.
No.
Okay, we'll move to closing comments by Mayor. The only thing I want to say is just what I said earlier. One of the, and by the way, city attorney, this isn't, we don't have new council members anymore. Tomorrow is our 1-year anniversary.
Yeah.
That's
look
true,
at
that is true.
We've been at this for a year. But one of the things I have enjoyed about this council is, and it's not always been this way for previous councils, but when we discuss things like we did today, we're professional in the way we discuss them. We have different opinions, we respect those. But when we leave the dais, we leave it on the dais. We're not going to walk out of here, angry with one another about whatever we said or however we voted. And I've really enjoyed that about this council to this point and hope that that continues going forward. So with that, if there's no other business come before the work session, we will adjourn the work session of the Clearwater City Council for March 31, 2025.